Welcome to the Grappling Grappling Rewind Podcast.
Welcome to this week on the Grappling Rewind Podcast. In this week's show, we are going to recap the 2022 IBJJF No-Gi Worlds, and we are going to preview the UFC Fight Pass Invitational 3 featuring a rematch, long-awaited rematch, between Vinny Magalhaes and Gordon Ryan, as well as some other really exciting fights. As always on the show, I'm your host, Maine, with my co-host,
Simon.
How you doing, Simon?
I'm great.
It's great to finally have you on.
What
finally
happened? It put my gaggle of kids to bed. No, I didn't put them to bed. My wife was putting them to bed, but I just kicked them to the side. I was like, all right, kids, got to go to Uncle Maine's house.
Yeah, do the podcast finally. So if you don't know, so we mentioned Simon a lot. Simon is actually so this is the news section because you're the only one actually on the team that's like able to cover the news from a background. You're like the only actual journalist that we have on the team.
I was a journalist.
You were a sports journalist.
Yeah, now I just do the cooking thing.
Now you're a cook. But you actually, when I have journalism questions, I tend to DM Simon and be like, hey, what does this mean? What does this do? How does this work in other industries that are not jiu-jitsu? And you've been a wealth of knowledge. When we did more writing contracts, you did a lot of that work on the back end, and we used to kind of do more of that. But now you're here. You're purple belt finally. The rule's always been you get purple. Now you co-host, and so now we're here.
It's actually weird because literally 30 minutes ago, you had mentioned so you're a purple belt now, and I was like, oh yeah, I am a purple belt now.
Yeah.
Like the vast majority of my time training jiu-jitsu, I was a blue belt.
You've been training 10 years.
No,
right?
no.
Something like that.
So I started on and off training in 2014.
Okay.
That was literally came in for a trial and then disappeared for a while.
All right.
And then 2015, that's when I was really fat. I was 300 pounds then. Actually 300 pounds, not like how you think that anybody that's over 200 pounds is almost 300 pounds.
Yeah.
I was actually almost 300 pounds at that point. So it was literally I trained as often as I could because it just kind of hurt to exist.
At that weight.
Yeah.
We both have the same spine surgery.
Yeah.
That
came after, though. That came after I got into not morbidly obese shape.
Yeah.
So that is all to say I was in and out, but 2016 is when I really started training.
I think when you come onto the podcast team, I think that was 2019.
It was the end of 19 that's when we were doing stuff for Fanatics and you wanted a website. And I was like, hey, in my former life, I used to build websites and do web content and SEO stuff.
Yeah, someone was like, hey, dummy, you're not qualified to do this and you know it and I know it.
No, it's because you were about to spend a buttload of money out of your own pocket when you're not generating any revenue on a professionally engineered, proprietary website that you did not need.
So Simon has very much helped the show on the back end, on the front end for many, many years. It's great to finally have you on the show. Yeah. We talk pretty much daily about MMA mostly, but also jiu-jitsu, so it's finally great to have you on the podcast. I usually forget to do bumpers for who people are on the show when we introduce new co-hosts. So trying to start off the end of 2022, 5+ years into the show off correct on a new foot. So let's see. So I want to switch it up this week. We don't have a ton of news because it's the holidays here in the United States where we're based. Everyone thinks shuts down. No-Gi Worlds is a big event, and not a lot of stuff tends to run around the holidays for Thanksgiving and Christmas. We do have Euros, IBJJF European Championships coming up. I think it's late January.
It's usually that third week of January.
Yeah, usually. I think that's the same date for it. I could look it up, but we're not looking it up right now. And so we just really have a kind of gap of news. Allegedly in news, ADCC, I think it might have been Reddit comment, so it could be wrong. ADCC is looking to run 7 events per state.
Dope.
Eventually, opens. So that would be, and apparently that's coming in the future at some point. So I don't know. I think I saw that on Reddit. So the validity of that comment is entirely called into question.
Great, though.
Mo and Seth and the rest of the team that run the ADCC Opens across the world have, and Mo specifically for the U.S. team, has talked about greatly increasing the number of open events they do. After watching No-Gi Worlds, would very much love to see some additional No-Gi events crop up with some different rule sets, because again, the level of athlete that we're seeing at No-Gi Worlds was better than we have ever seen it before. Tons of finishes, transitions. IBJJF has made some modifications to the rules. More games in town makes for better grappling that we get to see and commentate on and participate in. So I'm looking forward to that. I don't have any other news. Do you have any news?
Jacob Couch got his black belt.
Jacob Couch got his black belt. I always forget black belt news, and deservedly so. I think we're not going to get a chance to cover his match on this week's show. He had a really, really cool standing arm triangle finish.
Oh, but he wasn't standing, though.
Yeah, his
opponent
stood up,
so,
and he was like, "Nah, man, I got this. I got the squeeze." And
was that the finals for Brown?
I don't know. I didn't look at what round it was because we were trying to do all the black belts, and majors are always hard because it's really taking notes on 18 finals matches, 9 for the men, 9 for the women, with a couple of weird closeouts and no shows in the finals that we'll talk about at that section of the show. So a few less today, but. Overall, really interesting No-Gi Worlds. I want to switch the show up this week, not because it's the first time you're on, and that messes with the flow of the show. But Gordon Ryan is having a rematch with Vinny Magalhaes. I want to start there because I think there's a really interesting storyline there to talk about, and I don't think it will be close. Nope. So let's lead in. We'll talk about the UFC Invitational. Let's move into the preview section first this week.
Okay.
UFC Invitational 3.
Fight Pass Invitational 3.
Is it?
It is the Fight Pass Invitational 3.
Oh, look at that.
Yep.
UFC Fight Pass Invitational 3. It features a 8-man bracket that Gordon Ryan and Vinny Magalhaes are not a part of. Some super fights. We'll talk about that next. It also features Miesha Tate versus Bia Mesquita in a rough matchup for Miesha Tate. But let's talk about Gordon Ryan versus Vinny Magalhaes. This match last took place in 2018.
This weird match.
In ACBJJ. ACBJJ was basically the jiu-jitsu offshoot of ACB, the MMA promotion that then became ACA, the MMA promotion. And they ran jiu-jitsu events with rounds.
Yes.
So this was a 3-round bout because it wasn't a title fight on that card between Vinny and Gordon, and these guys were getting paid, which was great to see. Allegedly, these were some of the first big $100,000 plus contracts.
Remember for a second they had Gordon signed exclusively.
Yes.
That was a big deal until they just weren't around anymore.
Well, they weren't running events at a frequency that Gordon... back in 2018, Gordon was hot off the ADCC 2017, where he hadn't beat Felipe Pena to have the match with Galvao, and so he was looking to kind of stay on the grind to get back to ADCC 2019 and make the stamp that he would, again, go on to make in 19 and 22 and kind of... He was doing even doing IBJJF. He was doing No-Gi Worlds. Yep. He was doing No-Gi Pans. He was competing in a bunch of stuff. So ACBJJ locking him down. If they weren't going to run events frequently, I think he was not interested in that at that time. He had a match with Vinny Magalhaes. Vinny Magalhaes came in as former world champion, former world medalist at least. I always kind of blank on Magalhaes' credentials.
Did he won ADCC though?
I think he at least medaled. We could be wrong about this. I have an ADCC book behind me we could look at. Regardless, Vinny Magalhaes, very, very good. At this time, he was still... Vinny Magalhaes has always been a very, very crafty black belt. In the first round of their match, Vinny scores some points on Gordon. In the second 2 rounds, because I think there were 5-minute rounds, maybe 10-minute rounds. I think 5-minute rounds.
I want to say 5.
Yeah. In the second 2 rounds, no points were scored. Vinny wins 1 round via points, 2 non-scoring matches. Vinny takes that match. Gordon kind of goes, oh, that's weird. But that was kind of the perk of
I was watching the thing that was the whole... The rounds aspect of it was one thing. The match in
Go back and watch Josh and I cover this in 2018 when the podcast was 1 year old, 8 months old, and try to make heads or tails and try to explain through exactly what happened. You don't actually have to do that if you want. Go back and watch the match. It's on YouTube. So this is a rematch, and Gordon has talked about wanting this rematch for a long time, and he has talked about. He's always been complimentary of Vinny in going yo, you beat me. It's a match I won back. Vinny has agreed to the match, but Vinny then went back and fought in PFL. Almost won that season of PFL. Flying triangle his way to $1 million nearly.
Almost.
And
just pulled guard on guys for a year, and nobody had any. Plus, it's light heavyweight. The talent pool is.
It is light heavyweight. And the talent pool then PFL was you can discuss it.
The PFL in the world, the UFC light heavyweight division is
it's not the most technically savvy division overall. So Vinny went on. So this match has not happened. And there's potential for it to happen at ADCC. It didn't happen. There's potential to happen for other times, but it's never actually come to fruition, and now it's happening. It's under the UFC Fight Pass Invitational rules, which Simon and I can't find.
Nope.
We looked last week with Miranda and I. We've looked this week. We can't find it. If you can find it, good for you. This happens, I think, Thursday of this week. So we're going to go off the assumption that this is just a 10-minute match, a pretty standard black belt match. Might be 15 minutes. Wouldn't surprise me to have it 30 minutes. Nothing would surprise me here. But with UFC, They typically don't have very long matches. It's not really their forte.
But with Gordon, though, he's going to negotiate the terms that he wants.
Absolutely. So to see a 10-minute match or a 15-minute match would be normal. To see this go 20 minutes wouldn't surprise me. That being said, I think Gordon does
whatever he wants
to Galvao.
Whatever he
I
wants.
think he gets the back. I think he finishes the choke. I think he's going to be able to get Vinny down, which I think he's going to struggle more with getting Vinny down because of Vinny's MMA experience.
So did you watch the UFC this past weekend?
I watched the finishes.
Gordon kind of got the star treatment at the UFC. Like, you know when they do the camera pans? To
Yeah,
people?
yeah.
So they Gordon was one of the people. I was like, that is a grappler that they are featuring on a UFC pay-per-view broadcast.
He's on the pay-per-view for Dillashaw and Sterling and O'Malley. He was featured there on during the pay-per-view as not a stanchion, an insert. And they ran a promo for the event during that pay-per-view.
Well, that makes sense because they're going to promote property that's on one of their
Fight Pass,
platforms.
yeah.
I'm saying he was in the crowd and they did such and such celebrities here. Such and such celebrities here. And Gordon Ryan's here. And it was Gordon Ryan's a celebrity on a UFC pay-per-view broadcast. Yeah. He actually even went to the back and did media and stuff after.
Yeah, we used some interviews with him talking about the best grapplers in the UFC. It has been interesting. I think that Gordon subs Magalhaes. Mm-hmm. I think it's not really close. Vinny has had some rough matches recently. You look at his Craig Jones match where Craig Jones broke his foot off in submission underground in under 5 minutes.
Yep.
I think.
Something like that.
You look at Vinny's match with John Hansen at ADCC Worlds. Hansen, again, big fan of Hansen, but I'm cheering him in Nebraska, so I'm very biased when it comes to talking about Hansen. Hansen beat Vinny by injury, by sub. You look at Vinny's match versus in the Grand Prix with Cyborg and Nicky Rod from a couple years ago at Kasai. Vinny's had some rough goes at it recently and has not been on a lot of the winning side. Now, Vinny can absolutely still do it, and there's a reason why Gordon is interested in this match other than just it's a guy that beat him. Vinny Magalhaes is a feather to have in your cap as a champion level grappler. But I just think that Gordon's passing has progressed. His passing has progressed. His takedowns have progressed. His takedown has progressed. The body lock. I'm curious to see if he's able to get that on Vinny. I'm curious if Vinny keeps this at range for the entire thing and makes it a stinker.
All that talk about Gordon coming out with the UFC and getting the star treatment and all that, to bring that back real quick, it's because I think Gordon will, like I was also touching on earlier, will negotiate the rule set, the time limit, everything that he wants for a Gordon Ryan match, in which not even the Felipe Pena match or the Galvao match, but one of the the Alexio Oleinik match or one of those guys where he's I'm going to negotiate the terms of a match in which I can showcase a single part of my game that I want to showcase on this platform, and then either go in and cut instructional after, or just continue the Gordon Ryan revenge tour, which from a marketing standpoint is really the best thing that he can do for himself right now after he just basically did it all at ADCC. Yeah. He beat a former training partner. He beat a couple of guys that you would think, this is the guy that's on the rise. No, never mind.
Victor Hugo?
Yeah.
And I was like, it was going to be a tough match, and then he just passes Hugo. I was like, oh, well, that answers that question.
So now when you're looking at the story arc of Gordon Ryan, and he's very careful about crafting the narrative.
Him and John
of his
are both.
brand.
You look at kind of GSP's career, and John was not, was very largely instrumental in sort of how GSP crafted his career in the same way that he crafts Gordon Ryan. And I think they're both there. All three of those guys are pretty open about that strategy.
So now Vinny's just going to be number one on the hit list of the Gordon Ryan Revenge Tour.
Of the Crow Cop Revenge Tour.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then what was it? Who's number one that already got booked for next year?
Pena.
Yeah,
it's February. Yeah, we have the third match with Pena because Gordon wants to be 3-2 over Pena, which I appreciate the pettiness. Regardless of how you feel about Gordon, it is interesting to watch him. I want to see him compete in matches that he wants. This is a match he wants. I think he rear naked chokes Vinny. I don't think it goes to footlocks because I think that Gordon historically has never gotten to footlock shootouts with guys with good leg locks. But I just don't think that. I think that's where Gordon in the last match got points scored on him. He's not looking to entertain the same thing in this match.
Yeah, no, he's going to take him down. He's going to take his back and then choke him out in X amount of time and then say something really crafty on the mic and then go on with his life.
The only question is, does he call it? Does he do what he did in the Who's Number One events. I think Vinny is a higher caliber grappler. I think that would be a risky move, but he did it versus Pedro Mourinho with the smother choke. Like, he's done it to guys that are really good.
But didn't he not get the last one that he
didn't get the
though?
smother on Mourinho because Mourinho figured out if I just put my hands in Gordon Ryan's armpits, he can't get low enough down.
So I feel like after that, you kind of have to abandon the gimmick almost, or at least give it a little bit of time to rest.
Yeah. I think that could definitely be a reasonable strategy. I think we're both picking Gordon here. Again, Vinny has upset Gordon Ryan before, and it was an upset when it happened in 2018. Everyone's like, Gordon's going to move through him, and Vinny, Vinny's crafty. He's always been crafty. He will always be crafty. There's a guy that could give Gordon Ryan problems. It's a guy like Vinny Magalhaes, who's just that old school veteran crafty guy. Again, Vinny is 10 years older than Gordon, which Gordon always talks about as being like a benefit to like the older guys. They have more experience.
That man strength at this point. He even talks about it now, like when he's like getting into his 30s, he's saying like, oh, this is when I'm going to hit my athletic peak, because it's more of that isometric strength and not that dynamic strength that he needs at heavyweight. So
interesting. I'm excited.
Shall be fun.
Excited for the match. I pay for Fight Pass for like the 10 events that they run a year that are grappling. Very excited that this justifies my keeping that subscription. Other fights on the card. We have Miesha Tate and Bia Mesquita.
How do you think that plays out?
I think Bia probably takes that one. Again, Miesha Tate is a good grappler, and like she won the world title from Holly Holm with a rear naked choke. Like she does have submission wins. She did call Gordon Ryan when she commentated Quintet. So I'm not certain how really into professional grappling she is, but again, I do like the crossover. Miesha Tate's a big star. I think Bia Mesquita has looked great at ADCC. I think she probably takes that over Miesha Tate.
Murder, death, kill.
Top position, arm triangle or back take and choke.
Although you never know, because Miesha did have that thrilling submission underground victory over Jessica I all those years ago.
I remember that. That's a throwback.
Yeah.
We talked about that on the show.
I think that was Sug 2.
No.
That was early Sug.
That was like Sug 4. I could look it up, but we're not going to.
I know.
So,
we'll look at it after. I'll make fun of you.
Moving on to, there's also another match on this card that I can't find now. It is Big Dan Manasuri versus Ricardo Evangelista. Interesting match. Ricardo is a veteran. Big Dan is a guy on the come up. He has a game that is tailored to beating big guys. Ricardo is a guy that can throw a wrench into that. He's dynamic. He's big and strong on top, but I think he's going to meet big and strong with Big Dan, and Big Dan is going to be able to like turn him over and move him and get to a leg lock. Like, if you are a big guy and you're not one of the top like 3-4 guys in the world, I think Big Dan is getting to your leg. Like, that's everything about Big Dan just kind of shows me like, that's kind of what he does versus guys where he struggles with the smaller guys a little bit.
That's what I was going to say. With the guys that are not even like small, but guys that can be more athletic, can be more agile.
Anyone under like 210.
Yeah.
Really,
those are the guys that he struggled against. And so, I mean, just from like the stuff that on Flow and things like that, I think it's interesting to watch his development. He definitely has like future star kind of written on him,
especially with the camping at New Wave, with you being basically the top 5 guy at the New Wave team. Him, Luke Griffith, Gordon Ryan, Mergali, like he's in that list.
So he can sort of evolve into the new Nicky Rod, not style wise at all, but like that big guy that's in Gordon's camp and therefore gets the training partner and the training level of like like historically it's like being like Kobe Bryant's teammate essentially. It sort of elevates everybody else in the room, like one of those stories. I think that is sort of the potential that he can rise to, and it'll be interesting to see if he can do it. Especially with some other young guys already coming up with the ultra heavy ranks. Yep,
it will be fun. Again, I'm going to take Big Dan by heel hook. That's typically what he does. But again, Ricardo throwing a wrench into that and getting around, getting his back, and like causing problems for Big Dan also wouldn't surprise me, because Ricardo's not, he's bigger, but he's not
mammoth.
No, he's not mammoth. So, and that's the bigger the guy, the better Big Dan tends to do. Moving on, we also have a bracket that I'm really excited about. We have a $25,000 absolute tournament.
This is the reason for watching the event.
This is honestly kind of this is that hot fire. Very interesting way to bracket this, but. So, on the left side of the bracket, we have Hasim Rida versus Patrick Gaudio. That will be fun. Either guy can take this.
I'm biased. I'm always going to pick the African guy.
Always going to pick the African
every
guy.
single time. Morocco's in the Final Four right now, the World Cup. I'm celebrating that. Dricus du Plessis just won. He's South African, but still that counts. Like, I'm always going to pick the African guys.
If you guys can't see on the show, if you listen to the audio version, Simon has a full sleeve that is the African continent on his arm.
3/4, but cool.
I mean, 3/4 sleeve. Reps it hard, and I respect that. Again, the Hasim Rida that comes out versus Cyborg Abreu, and we're going to talk about Cyborg and No-Gi Worlds. That dude comes out versus Gaudio. It's curtains. Patrick Gaudio is also a veteran. And we've seen Hasim Rida now and again have missteps with like how he handles crafty veterans. If there's a guy like tactically that can give Hasim problems, it is a guy like Patrick Gaudio. This is a really, really fun match. I think these guys have met before, but I don't remember where. It might have been an IBJJF event. I think this is either a quick sub by Hasim, either by a choke, rear naked choke, or an armbar, or I think this is a crafty top position decision victory from Gaudio, where he just kind of shuts Hasim's game down, gets to the back, gets to the 3/4 ride, and just flattens him and kind of like slows Hasim Rida down. I think that's where this goes.
He's been so hit or miss. As someone who loves watching him when he's on, it's so infuriating. Who did he just lose to who's number one? I forgot already. It was just like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, I'm blanking. I'm trying to come up with it and stall for time and figure it out. I'm forgetting who it was.
Yeah, just when he's on when he subbed Cyborg, and you were there,
I
can't even
live.
I was at work. I was kind of looking down back and forth. I had paused it.
I talked to him after.
Dude, I paused it just before the Cyborg match, and then I came back and watched it, but I saw 1,000 notifications from the chat.
Yeah.
I was like, what just happened? And then I watched it 12 seconds later. I was like, that just happened.
Yeah.
Okay. But then that Rita never showed up for the rest of the tournament.
Yep.
And that is, as someone who loves watching him compete when he's on, you just always hope for that Rita to show up.
When that dude shows up, he's one of the top in the world, hard to beat. But when he doesn't, guys, crafty veterans like Gaudio with a really good leg lock game. Look at the Hamla Bahal, gross, one of the grossest leg locks of all time. Told, this is good. You're gonna go Rita. I kind of want to go Rita too, because I just like his style. I like Gaudio too.
He's just electric though. But
Hasim in this scenario, I think is gonna. If there's anything he's gonna show up for, it's the first round, something like this. Same side of the bracket. Mason Fowler versus Pat Shangoli. Pat Shangoli been getting a little hate recently from a lot of folks that are not used to real quick subs taken in comp, and that's a whole debate for another day. Within the bounds of the rules, the kid, I can actually say it now. Kid goes real fast on heel hooks on the legs. If there's a guy that I don't think is going to have a problem with that, it's Mason Fowler. Mason Fowler has taken on Craig Jones, 3 times? Twice in SUG and in ADCC. So 3 times total.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yep. And if Craig Jones can't leg lock you, I don't know who can in the world. Now, Shangoli is an interesting guy because Craig Jones will lock down control way more before he starts cranking. But Shangoli will just kind of grip, and he doesn't even care if both of his knees are in, both legs are in. He'll go high hand, he'll go low hand. He very much doesn't really care about the control he has on the leg, because he's going to fix that with the speed that he's taking the joint over. And so he doesn't really need the control a lot of times to get those taps and get those finishes based on that style.
This is where it'd be really interesting to know what the rule set is 100%.
Yeah.
Because I was telling you earlier, for some reason, I thought it was the EBI rule set that they used for Fight Pass Invitational, and Fowler at SUG was sort of the crafty veteran, gamed the EBI rule set to fit his game perfectly.
And got Craig Jones's back and then cranked on him twice. And I think, again, I'm going to go Mason Fowler here.
I would too, yeah.
Just because I think he's going to be able to shut down enough of Shangoli's game. He's seen it at the highest levels. You fought Craig Jones. Shangoli is going to throw up some interesting stuff, but I think Fowler is going to weather the storm and do what a lot of guys done, either completely stay out of the range and play it safe, or he's going to smash in, come to the side, stay on top. But I think those are the 2 pathways that we're going to see him kind of deal with Shangoli. But Shangoli has a really interesting inversion game, which is kind of why I think Fowler goes towards the back on this one. So I think Fowler moves on based on those reasons. Other side of the bracket, we have Nicky Rod versus Andy Varela. This is a match that we saw in the ADCC Absolute opening round, I think. And we saw Nicky Rod, I think the technical term is do work.
Yeah, I think it was the first one.
I think
it was the opening round of the Absolute bracket.
Nicky Rod picks up like 17 points on Varela before finishing him. I think Varela is just coming off an injury. Varela may or may not pull out of this because he did pull out of something recently. We don't know. Again, with any recent rematch, even if it's a different rule set, like I am hesitant to pick anyone but Nicky Rod because of how dominant he was in the first performance there. Like nothing about that performance indicates to me that anything will change or anything will be different from September to December now.
I think this version of Nicky Rod, unless you are Gordon Ryan himself, it's very hard to see anybody beating him, especially when you see that he's more than just explosive wrestling guy.
Dude, listen to the Simple Man podcast and listen to Nicky Rod talk about his performance at EB. I think we talked about it last week on the show.
You did. It was like, oh, I'm doing jiu-jitsu things
I did jiu-jitsu. And but he's happy about it. And like he's like, oh, I have other tools now that I can use. And now he's playing jiu-jitsu with a jiu-jitsu guy, and he has the stuff that got him to the dance too, that he is a tactical guy that's not going to forget that versus a dangerous guy like Varela.
More specifically just on the passing, though, when you just see, okay, I'm going to be way stronger than all these other guys.
Yep.
Even like his wrestling credentials aren't like...
They're high school.
Like Division 3 maybe also on top of that.
Division 3, yeah.
So,
right.
But then like he's like, okay, I'm going from jacked, explosive-y, takedown-y guy to actually adding pressure and passing to that game, which he should. Hello, look at him.
Yep.
And then putting all that together, it's like this version of Nicky Rod, not only is he very fun to watch, not only is he still very explosive and strong, but like those actual jiu-jitsu elements that he's folding into his game make this sort of event very tailored to him and make it's very beneficial to us as the viewers. It's going to be very TV friendly on top of that.
Which I think is good, which is, again, good matches.
Yep.
Moving, so I think we both think Nicky Rod takes that.
Yes.
I think he subs him.
Yeah.
I think he'll get the back again like he did at ADCC and sub.
Yeah.
Well, lower side of the right-hand bracket, we have Richie Martinez versus Oliver Taza. Interesting matchup. I'm going to go Taza here, recently ADCC. Like, Richie Martinez is great coach, put a lot of guys on the level, but overall, it's been a while since we have seen him.
When was the last time we've seen him in a high-profile match? Like, was he at Emeralds? No, not Emerald.
No.
What was that other New York one?
Rise. But I think he hasn't been on Rise in a while. I'm struggling to think of a recent Richie Martinez match where he has looked phenomenal, and Oliver Taza has looked very, very good recently. Richie Martinez is crafty, but Oliver Taza, I think the leg lock game that Oliver Taza brings, historically when Boogie runs up against like really, really upper echelon elite leg lockers like Craig Jones, he can get caught. I think that Taza is going to be like, he's going to be able to game plan for Richie. I think Richie will throw some kind of crafty stuff. Like, I think we'll see a buggy choke. I think we'll see some really interesting like half guard work and like jailbreak work from him. But I think that Taza is going to know that's coming because he's going to plan for it, and he's going to be able to work around that, and he's going to be able to get to he's going to probably get the knee bar or the heel hook on Richie Martinez.
Yeah.
So moving on to the next round of this, we got Hasim versus Fowler. I love Hasim.
I don't think he beats Fowler.
I don't think he beats Fowler.
Especially if it's not EBI rule set, but I that could be a fire match.
It could be. I think it could be a great. This is one that could be hit or miss. But I think I'm going to go Fowler here just because like Fowler is consistent, dude. Whatever you want to say about the guy, that dude is consistent. Whereas Hasim can be hot and cold. But if there's anyone that can pull a quick sub,
when was the last time Fowler got flash subbed by anybody though?
I keep thinking about 2019 Craig Jones with the guillotine, but it's not frequent. It is not a frequent occurrence.
Yeah, just style-wise, I take Fowler all day, even though it goes against all of my own personal biases. I also feel like the Fowler-Nicky Rod match is probably the most entertaining one that this bracket could produce, which is why they're on opposite corners of the bracket.
We got Nicky Rod versus Taza, former training partners, trained together. I think that Nicky Rod takes that. Nothing about his game indicates that he's not going to be able to take that.
I think he blows through Taza.
Yeah, he's going to have the size.
Yeah.
And Taza looks amazing. But if you can stifle his game and you can prevent him from getting to that inverted knee bar or to the heel hook or to be able to pass around you, like,
But everything about Nicky Rod's current game, I think, undoes all of Taza's strengths.
And that's the problem. It's like it's a nightmare style matchup with a strong athletic guy who also knows your game.
Mm-hmm.
Again, both of them are crafty, and I used to not give Nicky Rod enough credit for being crafty. Both guys are really crafty, but I just think this is you're bigger, stronger. You can hold him down. You get around him with the body lock passing he's going to implement. We saw in Yuri Samoes. We saw in Penna.
On Felipe.
On Felipe Penna.
If you pass Penna 5,000 times on the highest stage in the world, how are you not going to run through someone that you know so well like Taza?
Yeah, that knowledge and experience of his game, I think, is going to favor Nicky Rod being the stronger athlete. Because you know what to do versus the guy. Again, Taza also knows Nicky Rod, but I think that the size and athleticism will negate a lot of what crafty stuff Taza could do, and that's typically where we see Taza do the best is when he can be crafty in his game. But that's going to get kind of, I think, slowed down by Nicky Rod. So finals, Nicky Rod versus Fowler. If you go Nicky Rod.
Yeah.
You go Nicky Rod.
I think Nicky Rod steamrolls his way through the whole bracket. I
think we see him do jiu-jitsu. Fowler has played spoiler many times, though. EBI rules, I still go Nicky Rod there. I still go Nicky Rod for all of this. Fowler continues to surprise me, though. Whenever I see him in an EBI rule set, I'm always I've counted him out so many times, and I've been wrong so many times, I don't want to, but I do have a rule that I always pick Nicky Rod.
That's a good rule to have.
It's been a very, very good rule for me over the years.
I also think Nicky Rod blows through this whole tournament and doesn't sub anybody.
And then I think they try to make the Gordon Ryan matchup again because now he's the champion and now Gordon's on the same card and they're former teammates. So there's beef they can sell. And they had the match at ADCC. So,
but do any of us really want to see that matchup?
I don't think so, but
though?
I think that is a talking point. UFC is good about crafting their brand and imagery. I think that you have a absolute tournament champion and you have Gordon Ryan on the same card, that is the reasonable match to expect to make with whoever is the champion here. With Fowler, if it's Nicky Rod, if it's Rida, if it's Gaudio, if it's Richard Martinez, if it's Taza, if it's Shangoli, there's Varela, all of those guys, there's a storyline to be made because now you have the UFC Invitational Absolute Champion versus the King Gordon Ryan.
But who cares about the Fight Pass Invitational Champion?
UFC does.
Yes.
UFC will.
Okay, but how much really are they in the promotional grappling game, really? A
couple times a year.
One time a year. So, okay, maybe they do this next December, sure. But Nicky Rod has to win something big in between now and then to generate any sort of interest in that rematch because we're so fresh off of just the big brothering of him months ago at this point. I think
3 months ago at ADCC.
Nicky Rod at least has to win something huge in between now and then.
Five Pass Invitational.
He has to
win
$25,000. Something huge in the grappling world. Even if it's Emerald City or if it's one of these IBJJF Grand Prix. Even though I don't really know how many IBJJF events.
He can't. He's not a black belt. IBJJF would never do that.
True.
He's still technically a brown belt in the biggest affront to grappling that currently exists.
Or who's number one event or something that not the Fight Pass Invitational. Even though they put together a baller 8-man bracket.
I think honestly
I'm gonna watch all of it.
Yeah, I think one of the best brackets we've seen them put together. I'm very excited. There's a lot of ways that this could go completely haywire, and I'm down for it, and that's good matchmaking.
But just to touch on Nicky Rod and the progression of his game one last time, I think he blows through this bracket, and he does so in a way that a lot of old school freestyle, not old school, a lot of traditional freestyle wrestlers will do, where they're like, oh, I'm just gonna tech this guy to show them that you're my son.
That I can.
I think he just scores 20 points on everybody, and it's just gonna be a marvel to watch.
So I'm excited for it. That does it for the preview for the UFC Fight Pass Invitational. Switching it up this week, Simon. I'm going to do the previews before the recaps. Spicy. All right, let's move on to the recaps here. We have the IBJJF No-Gi World Championships 2022 off the heels of ADCC. And if we learn one thing, it's that, guys that do well in ADCC or get to ADCC, probably some of the best guys in the world, a lot of familiar faces, a lot of returning folks, both on the women's side and on the men's side, in a surprise to no one. That's kind of always been the flavor for it. Typically, it is less attended, especially in ADCC years. This year was kind of the case. A lot of guys, if you look through the, I think, I want to give credit where credit's due. I think Bloody Elbow. Yeah, Bloody Elbow did a really, really good round by round for all of the black belts. And I love the write-up because it shows who had buys in the first round, what happened. Like, it gives a very, very good overview of what happened. Flow has the results laid out too. There's a couple of sites that did a good job this year. Bloody Elbow only has the points. It doesn't actually have how many points were scored, but I love that I looked through the rounds today because we weren't going to have enough time. It finished last night late, and then we both have jobs and stuff. I wasn't able to watch through all of the black belt matches because that's just not feasible for the team that we have.
And so I went to bed at like 10.
Yeah. And so didn't have a chance to, it gives us a chance to kind of see the rounds and the brackets as they unfold without needing to like go and source every match ourselves. So I appreciate that Bloody Elbow does coverage like that. It's very good. Also, I think BJJ Heroes. No, I pulled the wrong results for that one. I haven't seen it on Heroes yet, but a couple organizations did it. Just Magazine did it as well. So where do you want to start here? You want to start
with my people or your people?
Start with my people.
Okay.
So we're gonna start with the men's. I'm not a roosterweight.
But you're still.
I'm a tiny.
Hey,
person.
everything to you over 200 is close to 300. Everything under 200 to me is like 130.
Yeah, that's reasonable. Those are close to my people though. Men's roosterweight division. We had Osama Alwari defeating Rotira Lima. Are you better at names than everyone else on the podcast?
Not really, but I'll do them if you really want me to.
I mean, I can do them, but I didn't know if you were like, I'm actually good at names.
Nah.
All right, so good to know. It wins us by an advantage. This was really like a battle of leg locks.
Yep.
It was in my notes. There's a couple notes where it's like multiple.
That is the chief note in my.
Multiple gross things happened. A lot of really, and we saw IBJJF, the rule change for IBJJF. I think kind of one of the main talking points we talked about in the pre-show was that the change in allowing for reaping and heel hooks in black belt divisions at adult for IBJJF took a year and a half, 2 years to like get ready. But now this is, I think, the first event that we're seeing where it's like, oh yeah, this is back to leg locks and entries are positions, not necessarily like dead to rights. And this match, I think, Roosterweights exemplifies that as one of the better finals matches. It's like,
it was a positional battle where they were both going for their respective entries. And that, like you were saying...
But they were going for the entries. They weren't all the time going for the finishes. You were watching guys like get halfway stuffed into an entry or get into an entry and then have it escaped. And then it was used as a tool to like work to positionally advance your game or come back or to fire off your own leg lock attempt. And it was...
And that was across the board, yes. Like strategy-wise, you see guys now that they can enter and they're not afraid of getting DQ'd or penalties at that point. You see them using those positional battles, and it's overall changing the general strategies and gamesmanship of these top-level grapplers.
So there was a really fun Lima at one point. So Lima loses the match, but he does have a really, really fun sequence where he goes, fuck it, we ball, and he just jumps and does like a jumping knee bar that looked deep. And the camera angle was great. Some of the camera angles were not great for the event, but this camera angle was great, and you could see the extension that he had like hipped up and over into it. And Osama was just like, nah, son, I'm good. I'm not going to tap to this, and I'm not worried. And he gets his hips up, he turns, he changes the angle, and it was just a very, very fun entry to watch. And then the defense from Osama, you saw it come in, that he really wasn't like, didn't even seem that bothered by it. Because he was able to get his hips up and into the knee bar and not let full, like, well, he did let full extension happen, but not let, like, breaking extension happen horrifically on the leg. I did like the grip that Lima used. So traditionally you teach the knee bar with the grip on the heel at the top to prevent the roll through. I do it, and I see a lot of guys do it. I always thought it was bad technique, or I always thought there was, like, a better way to do it. I'm watching it now in professional grappling. A lot of guys, and most guys, just use the overarm grip most of the time. And I'm not certain why I haven't like picked up on that. I've always seen it as a thing, but I've always known it as, well, you really should grab the heel. Guys don't really grab the heel as much anymore. It's just not a thing you see. And so this match just triggered in my head because I just taught knee bars this week like twice.
I was gonna say you usually like go for that over armpit guy too.
I go that too. Yeah. But again, I always teach to grab the heel, and I think in watching it and kind of thinking about all the high level matches, Very few guys still do that. I think I'm just going to start teaching it now with this grip that Lima uses, just a double over grip, because you have enough control of the knee where you don't necessarily need to grab the heel from most positions, especially inverted positions like Lima grabs it from.
Yeah, and I think also across the board, you saw a lot more guys wearing spats. I think with the preparation of, okay, this is going to be a leg lock positional battle. This is going to be back and forth seesawing where I'm trying to get on top or sweep or at the very least get the advantages. So we saw a couple finals matches and same score, but such and such won on one or two advantages.
So very fun match. This ends with basically Osama getting a belly down ankle lock. So it's tied on as because of the back and forth, and wins it on that belly down ankle lock that he gets an advantage for at the end because it's a tight sub. You have as time expires, you get an advantage for it. Osama takes that.
It was like seconds left.
Yeah. So he held it for a while, and then when the time ends, they give you an advantage after time expires. So he is the first. What country is he from?
Oh, I just looked that up.
I looked at his flag and I was like, cool. But first No-Gi World Champion from that country, and I'm looking at the flag and I'm gonna blank on it, but Atoskai. On the light featherweight, we had Lucas Pinheiro defeating Babito Oliveira via advantage. Every time Lucas Pinheiro wins something, I feel less bad about getting my ass beat by him in Dallas. Every time I see him win, I'm just like, that's fine. That horrific loss where he beat me with my A game is fine. This was a lot of Pinheiro on top, and it was a slow match. Babito really relies on his flexibility for big sections of the match, but Pinheiro scores an advantage, and then later in the match gets back to the guard and just kind of holds in
He seemed the aggressor the whole time. Even when he was trying to stack him, and it just seemed like the aggressor the entire time.
Because he was forcing Babito in the range where Babito could never really get a lot of his guard inversion game going, and he could never get really any of his sweeping game going. It was very, very interesting, the range that Pinheiro decided to play this from. And then once he gets the advantage, he gets down to the guard, and then he just holds, he's kind of trying to active pass, and he's like, hey man, we're going to stall this out to the end. And double stalling penalty, Pinheiro gets the other advantage for that because Babito now has two advantages. Let's see. Oh, yeah, this was a weird match. And so Pinheiro takes that on advantages with great games. Again, not necessarily my favorite way to watch a match get won, but cannot fault Pinheiro for knowing the rules, understanding what we had to do to win, and holding Babito in that position so that there would be mirrored stalling penalties so that he could get the advantage. I got some issues with reffing as per usual.
Yeah.
I watched this match and I was like, oh, beginning of the match goes, Babito pulls guard with no grips. And they were kind of touching hands, but not something that you would term in IBJJF as a grip that you are legally allowed to pull guard off of without a negative. 40 seconds go by. And I was like, that's weird he didn't get the negative for that guard pull. And then they stop the match, they give him the negative, and Jake Watson on commentary. By the way, great commentary team.
Oh,
Chase and Jake Watson.
Especially on the flow zone the whole day on Sunday, It
was awesome. Those guys do a phenomenal job.
Side note, Osama Al-Muari is from Yemen.
Okay, cool. So...
Sorry, that was bugging me.
No, it's good. I appreciate you got it. And I stalled for time as you looked it up.
If I was listening to the podcast, I would have texted you tomorrow and been like, dude, he's from Yemen. Come on.
Yeah. Yeah, you
Yemen,
probably,
not very far from Eritrea, so that whole region,
you should know.
Them's my people.
You text me more than I think pretty much anyone else. I love it though, because I love getting corrections for the show because it helps us do a better show. Now you're gonna be the guy, Simon, when I text you and someone gives us a correction about I text you. Oh. So you're now in the loop of it.
Bring it.
It was very funny to have the commentary call it was kind of 40 seconds late. And it's annoying. We didn't have anything egregious this World Championship where it was someone got keenaned or Brazilianed. But it was a couple times like this where it's they were slow to call stuff, or they were moving the points on the board, taking the points off the board, changing to an advantage, stopping the match. There was a couple of matches, and we'll get into one of them here in a minute.
The power went out on the scoreboard at one point. That was funny.
That were weird, and it was weird to have kind of a basic call like this take so long to come onto the board. Again, I don't think it changed the tactics for either guy, but it was just weird for it to happen at a world level when your best referees, your best competitors, that takes 40 seconds for them to decide that was not enough contact. Again, I think they're using review now, so I would much rather have a late call that is correct.
Only using review on penalties or people that are rolling out of bounds on submission attempts, though?
Is that it?
I thought that's why they introduced it.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
And I know they have a review criteria that is not well documented in the rules. I read the rule book recently because I needed to prove a point on the internet. That I hate that that's the reason. It wasn't like for my own edification. It was like
that's very on brand for you, though. Don't be ashamed of that.
It really is.
Just ride with it.
Yeah. And so but we saw. So I don't think it changed the tactics of the match. It was just I'd much rather have a correct call that takes a long time to be made. Especially with ADCC, like I'm more used to that now, where it's like, hey man, you do whatever you can do on the mat. Points come on the board when points come on the board. I appreciate that because then you get correct points on the board most of the time versus like points, no points, add, no add, flipped add, not add. It's like it gives the competitors something where it's like, okay, there's nothing on the board. Okay, there is something on the board versus changing it or needing to redact a call. I would love to see them on the board quicker, but again, this is better scenario.
That's at least within the human margin of error, though, in terms of just officiating at all. Like we were talking about it before the show. If you look at like worldwide sporting events, there are bad calls in the Super Bowl. There are bad calls in the World Cup. Let alone combat sports, there are going to be bad calls.
Like, bad calls this weekend in the UFC.
Jeez, there are some bad calls. That's a whole nother episode, show, everything entirely. But
Simon and I love sports betting, and sometimes we get upset when things don't work out.
Some of us lost hundreds of dollars in potential earnings this week because. Anyway,
by the way, now sports betting is now legal in the state that we live in.
Oh, it's so much fun,
and it's not going to be a problem, but
I mean, for some people, it's going to be a problem.
It's going to be a problem.
For me, I'm getting a better Christmas for my kids. So, officiating though, I felt like you were mentioning it earlier. Yeah. Nobody got Keenan'd this year.
Right.
There was not a world champion that got stripped away because of bad officiating.
Yeah.
So something like that, and with guard pulling though, it's so common. I feel like I didn't even really see it when it happened because you're so used to the guys that this is their A game.
Right.
They're gaming whatever rule set it is in order to just try to. Yeah. Not obviously just sit on their butt.
I hate less on the athlete for gaming the rule, but it was just interesting. It was interesting that this call took as much time as it took in an event. That like
was
this. That was my only point I was making here. Featherweight. So we have Lucas Pinheiro taking that over Bito Oliveira via advantage. Played it well. Moving on to the next match. This was spicy.
Yep.
Gianni Grippo versus Gavin Corbray. Again, we talk about Gavin Corbray a lot. I've commentated a bunch of his matches when he competed for Copa Virginia in their cash prize divisions. We watched his run at No-Gi Pans. He is a local guy to us. Thank God he does these tournaments and not local tournaments so that he's not beating my ass at featherweight locally. He's at featherweight here. It would be fun to have a match, but it would be, I'm very happy he's on the world stage and not competing locally because he's a Maryland guy. I have great notes here. I don't know where to start with this match. This was back and forth, leg lock entries from both guys, a ton of De La Hiva, reverse De La Hiva, inversions, Kiss of the Dragons attempts from both guys, spin outs, turn outs, single leg acts. Like, this was a 10-minute match where they were just going for it for 10 minutes. But it wasn't the leg locks we saw a couple of years ago, where it's like both guys are kind of like have the one entry they like, and like they just kind of hit each other, and no one really ever gets deep into anything. This was both guys willing to play the game, willing to get deep in the leg locks and like see where they're going and pass up, and like they did. Both guys looked like they were playing for the sub and would take the points if they were available to them. Both guys didn't look like that they were going to be like, I'm going to get my 2 points and stall here. Like, no, they were both into the leg locks enough where you could see offense and great defense. Like, every time that Gavin would go for the heel hook, he would turn. Gianni, not every time, but a couple of times, you see Gianni immediately step up and out. He would get his knee and leg behind Gavin's butt, push off, turn out, then immediately readdress in. Like, he wouldn't even, a lot of times, pulley yank his leg out. He would come back because he still had some hip control there and then begin passing again or begin to enter his own leg lock exchanger, teeter up. Like, there were so many moments in this match that were just like, that was played very well. Oh, that was played very well. And both guys, to have a good match, you need to have two competitors that are willing to kind of put it on the line. Both these guys were willing to do that.
So I think this also touches again on the point we were talking about earlier with the introduction a couple years ago of heel hooks and reaping, how it's changing game plans overall. I feel like that very much well suits Grippo's his strength as a grappler.
Yeah.
But also, like you were saying, the positional battle is no longer linear. It's no longer I go from A to B to
Right.
It's this kind of web that's weaving in both the top and the bottom level of game plans where you're not just thinking like, oh, I'm going to go blah, 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 and then rip his heel off or whatever. It's that craftsmanship, that game planning, that meta of everything's blending together. And
Leg
it doesn't
locks
just
have
go straight.
turned into positions. Like
Yes.
they are positions now. It's not like what we talked about on the pre-show. Like guys used to get saddled 5 years ago. And it was like a dead position. It was like, yeah, you get saddled here, and then you heel hook the guy.
Mm-hmm.
And it was called the 4-1. They had a bunch of names for it. They were basically like, this is a terminal position that you get a guy here, you win. And the whole point is to get the guy there, and then you win.
Ric Flair used to hit it all the time in the 90s. I don't know if you remember.
I don't know
Or
that.
and before the 90s even, but I watched it in the 90s.
But now we're seeing like guys get to saddle. Like Gavin gets a saddle here, and like Gianni's like, all right, cool. He'll pass out, turns his leg out, opens his hips wide. Pat pushes the top side leg down, pushes the bottom side leg out, and like he passes out and turns and like and attacks his own leg entanglement. It was just the development that we are seeing now. And guys like Grippo that were historically not like big leg lockers, the comfort and confidence he has in now, and like watching him at Wimbledon Invitational and like moving into to have the no-gi game that to take his third world title in no-gi for the IBJJF really speaks and just shows how much that game has developed over the last couple of years. And a guy like young guys like Corbray, new black belts coming in with that knowledge and with that depth, and veterans like Grippo kind of meeting in the middle where it's like, yeah, these are all just positions now. We're just doing jiu-jitsu.
That sequence where you were just talking about before the show, it was tied up when
Grippo
goes for the toe
4
hold.
and 4, so they had teeter-tottered back and forth. I think it was 2 teeter sweeps each. So basically, from the open seated guard or some leg entanglement, there had been a sit down and a come up like 2 times for each guy. And then Grippo grabs a toe hold, and he grabs it on the leg not controlled with his leg, on the free leg, in a way that you typically don't see guys finish.
Unless it's a few years ago where the dudes that were great at toe holds were like, I'm going to rip your foot in half.
And they did a lot of times. Gavin Corbray is a tough fucking dude.
Yep.
Dude, that leg, it looked gross, but I loved both Grippo and Gavin in this match. They were rolling out of bounds and then made the decision. They went, oh, I'm rolling out of bounds. I better like defend my foot by moving my foot, move my hands and shift my hands, and then rotate. And then Gavin starts to do that because earlier in the match, he had been on a heel hook that Gianni Grippo had rolled to the edge of the mat. And then you saw Gianni Grippo go, oh, we're rolling to the edge of the mat. Oh, if this is a submission off the mat that I'm defending legitimately by moving this direction, he's going to score 2 points on me. And you see Grippo walk his hands so that they can change the angle. So they basically, like a little train station, they turn like a rotary thing for how you turn a train. Mm-hmm. They get to the edge. Grippo kind of turns them, and then he keeps rolling back into bounds. And I went, that just would have never happened 2 years ago.
Yes.
That just, you guys didn't do that. It was because off the mat, like IBJJF has changed their rules for submissions off the mat. They've changed the way you can play the edge. And overall, you've gotten really cool gamesmanship items where it's a Grippo goes, oh, tactically and technically, I don't want to go off the mat here because I will be scored on. So I will continue my defense and turn us here and then continue my defense in this direction. And it was just great to see that level of comprehension and understanding in the position. And then Gavin does the same thing, but Grippo is able to keep pushing Gavin and forcing him to turn in this nasty open-toed, uncontrolled toe hold off the mat, scoring the 2 that would inevitably win him the match here.
So overall, I think the biggest point to take away from that is you no longer have to be the leg locky guy. It's no longer the gimmick. It's a fundamental part of championship grappling at this level.
You no longer have to be the leg lock guy, but you no longer can't be the leg lock guy.
Correct.
Like, it's just not it is no longer a skill set that you cannot be a black belt in. You have to be really, really good if you want to take black belt titles. And like Grippo changed his game and like showed that, like, again, another world title under the old rules, under the new rules. Gianni Grippo still got it. I'm super happy that he healed his knee injury and he's back. Cannot wait to see him in trials again or on the next big no-gi event. Again, I love watching Grippo. Moving on to the lightweight bout. Dante Dillon dropping into the lightweight, takes on Carlos Henrique. He takes that via 2 points. Dante plays the perfect range here, dude. He leverages his athleticism, gets around, like he forces
for winning, not for entertainment necessarily.
Not for entertainment,
No.
but for winning.
Yes.
And again, I as we do the show more and more, I try to like I fault guys less for how they win and more that, yep, you got it done, whatever you needed to do. Dante plays at a very safe range, but he continued to put pressure on Carlos for a lot of this bout. And then late in the match, they have a fun sequence where Carlos is down and he goes, okay. They stand up, and then Carlos, with 1:20 left, shoots. Dante, sprawls down, doesn't quite get the hand off the single leg, sprawls down again, and then comes up and then snaps down Carlos Henrique. And I went, that was a wild sequence to watch, because Dante, he sprawls just enough out of the single leg to make Carlos's hands come down, and he has to catch himself and come back up, and then Dante gets his chest over Carlos's back and then snaps him down to the mat to score the point. Oh, no, to not score the points, but to get him down.
Correct.
Carlos rolls, and then later in the match, it was 1.5 minutes left in the match. Dante sits, and then Carlos tries to do what Francisco Lowe did to Oliver Taza at No-Gi Pans. The jumping, flying triangle over the guard. Dante sees it, doesn't get subbed, lifts over, does a tech sweep up with it, grabs the leg. Carlos does a great job, turns belly down, but still standing. Dante grabs the back of the... Was there a wrestling term for this thing?
Jeez.
Dante grabs the back of the calf with the shin on his own shoulder, with Carlos facing away from him, and basically walks Carlos around. And commentary, Jake Watson, picks it up immediately. He goes, man, it's not a great way to finish it, but it is a great way to eat time. And Dante Leon, because he's up at this point on ads, can take his time here, and then Carlos knows he has to go, dives for the knee bar on Leon, and Leon stuffs it, and then gets top position for 2 points, and that's the entire match. But it was just really, really nice gamesmanship off of something that not Francisco Lowe, different guy, same technique, that Carlos Henrique had to do versus Leon, which is I have to shoot this triangle because I'm down with 1 minute left, and Leon was able to just counter it, score points, and take a very comfortable victory here. And he takes, again, another world title. I interviewed Dante after his first No-Gi World title at Kasai. You can find that interview on the Grappling Rewind YouTube page. And I asked him about closing out with a teammate, because he closed out with John Satava, with I'm gonna blank on who he closed out with.
I don't even remember that.
Yeah, he closed out with a teammate, and I'm blanking on who he closed out with then. I'm looking at the guy's face, and so he talked about closing out. And it's cool to see him. And he goes, "Yeah, he didn't have a world title. I didn't have a world title. We weren't going to close out. It is cool to see Dante Leon." I remember him saying that.
Yeah.
Now he has a world title, and he has another one here. So I like seeing the progression of Dante Leon. Been following him since, I think, purple belt, before we even did the show. So really, really cool.
I learned about him from you. So whatever that was, that's when I learned it.
5 years of the show. Next match, we have a middleweight match. Andy Murasaki defeating Igor Fels. And commentary wasn't super familiar with Igor. I wasn't super familiar with Igor. Looked good throughout the tournament. But, man, Andy Murasaki is a tough dude to crack. First half of the match was pretty... not super interesting.
But from the point where he got to butterfly... Or even no.
I watched...
leg lock attempts right before that one also.
That was neat. But the butterfly entry...
It is very Maine-like. I was like, okay.
I watched this over and over and over and over. Because, again, I'm playing with the false reap now, because I'm like, it's a technique that I watch couch use. I'm like, I got to figure out how to do that better. And we're seeing it now in the IBJJF. We're seeing it used as a tool. Play a ton of butterfly guard. Andy Murasaki did a thing that I am trying to incorporate in my game. And I went, all right, how do you do that? And Igor, to his credit, had a great counter when he did it.
Oh, I thought you were about to say.
No, sorry, that's me. That's me getting a drink and throwing it for you to describe the sequence.
Not usually mid-sentence. Anyway, yes. So he did try to shake him off at that point, but like you were pointing out, which again was a very Maine-like thing to do, he re-grips and just yanks that leg back to bring the knee line past.
The whole sequence is wild. Murasaki, from the double arm grip on the butterfly guard, gets Igor coming in, throws the hands up over the head to enter like you would for like a knee bar from the bottom from butterfly guard. From that position, he goes to the side. He goes for the false reap on the leg. Mm-hmm. Igor goes, my man, and just yanks his leg up and lifts Andy Murasaki with him as he tries to yank him out. Murasaki, in transition, scoops under for the heel hook, They land. Murasaki goes, my knee isn't in a great position to finish this heel hook. Let me pass it to the other side. Passes it over to inside 50-50, changes the grip again, and then finishes the heel hook.
Yeah, so you don't have kids, but when they do the thing where they like hold on to dad's leg and dad like walks around like he's a giant. Yeah, this is sort of that sequence where he tries to literally just yank his leg out, but
usually that works in no-gi. Like a lot of times that works, but the commitment
to like keeping that knee past his leg line and just getting that bite back on the heel hook.
Murasaki's a middleweight. To lift your entire body up with the grip that he had off that leg, and then in transition scoop under to get that grip. It is special jiu-jitsu. It is not something that we see on a regular basis, and I very, very much enjoyed. Like, that's wild shit in a world finals match for no-gi for IBJJF. Like, very nice to see cool highlight reel subs. And again, love seeing Andy Murasaki finish. Very, very fun. Very, very fun match. Moving on to the medium heavy. We're getting into your people, Simon.
We're getting there, yeah.
Jonathan Gracie defeats Sebastian Rodriguez via points 3-2.
This got uncomfortable.
Oh, it did. So I watched Sebastian Rodriguez. I commentated. I judged a bunch of his matches at the ADCC Open. He was getting coached by Murillo when Murillo could still coach at ADCC. And a bunch of guys were telling me, like, during the day, like, between matches, like, how good he is. Like, oh, that's gotta watch. And, like, we'd watched him. I'd seen him before. We've covered him before. But watching him in person at the ADCC Open was like, oh, this is a dude that I need to pay special attention to. He looked good here.
Yeah.
But Jonathan Gracie, one knee or two knees is a tough dude to crack. Sebastian Rodriguez scores first here. Not a lot done in the first 5 minutes, but about 5 minutes in, Sebastian Rodriguez goes for an ankle lock. And you see Jonathan Gracie, like, he's got a knee brace on. You're like, that's not really a big deal. A lot of guys have knee braces on. And you see Sebastian, like, crank on an ankle lock that doesn't really look like it's a tight ankle. It looks like it's tight. And he kind of switches to an Aoki lock, but it's kind of going out of bounds. And it's not like, it doesn't look like Jonathan Gracie is about to tap to it. It looks like, that's annoying. He's got to deal with that. They go out of bounds. And then you see the restart. And you see Jonathan Gracie stand up, and you see him go like, oh. And you see him limp hard and not be comfortable and limp back to the center of the mat. And you're like, oh, that leg is fucked. Can he get this done with like a compromise? Like even commentary goes, ooh, that leg, I think they said that leg is compromised.
Yeah.
My note says, ooh, that leg is fucked.
Yeah.
The knee specifically, it's all caps because I had caps locks on for this match.
But then he goes and he locks up that leg,
he does.
The bad leg immediately after the reset.
Yep.
And it hurt me watching.
Yeah. You watch, it was like, oh, cool. Like, Sebastian knows now he has to attack for that leg because, you've had a guy slow to get up, come back over, and it's like, at a world championship level, like, hey, man, you have a good leg, you have a bad leg, I want a gold medal, so I'm going to go for the bad leg because that's what you do.
Of course, yes.
And nobody faults anyone for that in grappling. I do love how brutal this sport is, where everyone goes, oh, it's taped up, go for that one. And everyone goes, oh, of course. And it's also why judo guys tend to tape both of their hands equally. It's a thing I picked up from one of my first judo coaches like 10 years ago, was like he would always tape whatever injury he had, he would tape both hands exactly the same so that you never knew what hand it was. And I'm like, that's cold. That's some stone cold shit.
Yeah.
But it's for this reason, and Sebastian Rodriguez kind of keys into that, isn't able to get anything done. He is able, with a leg lock exchange, to turn Jonathan Gracie over because Gracie tries to kind of tech out of it and get up, gets to the bottom, can't invert himself, and then Sebastian Rodriguez is up 2-0 in a close match with Jonathan Gracie's knee. On the reset, immediately, Jonathan Gracie goes, not today, my guy. Diving knee cut through with the underhook.
That was insane, like how explosive he was at that point in the match.
He dove scarf hold, like a modified scarf hold from a reset and got it. And got his points on it, and then he used the grip that we're seeing a ton of, that overhand grip on the shoulder, to immediately try to fight for the back. And then Sebastian does a great job of defending it, but he's already had the 3 points scored on him. They end, with some back and forth, and then the match ends. John Gracie wins. He goes yes, and then immediately just lifts his leg up, and the medics come over. They're like,
no, stop doing that. This is hard to watch.
Yeah, the medics immediately go, "Is it fucking?" He goes, "Yeah, man, it's fucked. I won a world title though, so it's all good." And so props to John Gracie again, just showing the level of grit and toughness to like go out with a bum knee or whatever he's got going on with a knee sleeve on and win a world title versus like a super dangerous guy in Sebastian Rodriguez.
Yeah.
Moving on to the heavyweight division.
That final that never happened.
Andre Porfirio. So we got two matches that didn't happen, both in the men's divisions. We're gonna talk about them. Let's do ultra heavy first.
Okay.
Then let's talk about the open class, and let's talk about this match. So ultra heavyweight,
no, super heavy.
ultra heavy,
Super heavy.
super heavy was Sassoni and Trovo.
Yeah, we didn't talk about them.
Huh. Yeah. I all of my notes got deleted out. There we go. Good.
There it
Whew. I was staring at just a blank note, and I had like a paragraph, and it's
Hey,
it's gone.
these are my people.
What's up?
There's something between heavy and ultra heavy.
The super heavyweight division. Henrique Sassone defeats Felipe Trovo via advantage. All right, Simon, take it over for your people.
Okay, this was not exactly the most stellar matchup in terms of advocating for heavyweight grappling at the highest of levels, where it all basically came down to who was going to game the system best.
Sometimes it'd be like that, Simon.
Hey,
Sometimes it'd be like that.
As someone who watches folk style wrestling, like I love watching the NCAA wrestling tournament every year, especially when you get to certain weight classes, you're like, okay, who's going to game the ref best?
Yeah.
And even like when I was in like high school and I wrestled club in college, I was not good. Don't think this is me bragging about my credentials, but I had a teammate who was a master at figuring out how to actively stall and just sort of like look a ref in the eye and be like, ref, I'm working, where he was not working at all. This actually got to the point where, like we were talking about earlier, the points system now and like how points are being played, rolling out of bounds, things like that, you start to realize, okay, he cannot be passive at this point. I forgot what point of the match it was. I actually didn't take down notes on.
So Sony
for Trovo towards the end of the match.
I will sum up my entire notes for this match. Is the points got really confusing because I know the points and the points on the board kept moving.
Yes.
And they kept shifting, and the commentary was doing a phenomenal job of explaining like what was happening.
Yes.
And then we'd go from 2-2 to 2-0 to an advantage being added, to an advantage being taken away, to a penalty, to not a penalty. It was
there was like one penalty at one point, and then it was to the point where if he had backed up again, you thought, okay, he might, Sassoni might, or Trovo might actually score here,
right? Because if you get, so IBJJF the rules are, if you're not familiar, you get one penalty, it's just a penalty, no one gives a shit. It can decide the match if you're even on score for everything else. If that's the deciding factor, the person with the penalty will lose, the person without the penalty will win. Second penalty, it's a penalty, your opponent gets an advantage awarded to them. Third penalty, your opponent gets 2 points awarded to them. Fourth penalty, you're disqualified. It's a system, we've talked about the rules before, but that's the system that they use. So it matters after the first penalty. If there's score on the board, the first penalty kind of doesn't matter if their scores are different because it's not a deciding factor. But as soon as a second penalty comes into play, then you're giving your opponent an advantage. As a third penalty comes into play, you're giving them points. And so it can drastically change what's going on. And so if you're going to follow, with this match was a very, very tactical match.
The score was tied at that point.
Maybe it was tied.
The way that it seemed at that point, the score was tied. Had he gotten one more penalty, that would have been game.
Right.
Yes. So, again, the officiating, I don't think was bad at all. I think it was well within the margin of human error, especially when you look at a championship event.
I just think, so my gripe with it is, this is the best guys in the world. If there's ambiguity with the score, and we're like multiple pieces in the score are changing simultaneously, stop the match, get the score correct. Now let the viewer, and especially the athletes, understand the stakes and criteria of what's going on so that they can make tactical decisions. Because this was such a fairly slower tactical match between both guys, it was very hard to figure out, and my notes are kind of poor for this, to figure out why and explain why people were making certain tactical decisions because the score kept changing throughout the match.
I also think across the board you saw a few Atos guys in these situations where they were playing the system as best they possibly could.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that Gaudio and Andre is so good at doing. Like, people talk about him, he has one of the best knowledges of the rule sets, and the gray area rules and like how everything works exactly how you need to score and win. And so he carries that onto his camps, especially if he's in your corner. Like, that's a dude that knows every rule, knows exactly how every rule works. You don't win that many world titles without having a really, really good grasp of all different rule sets. World Pro, ADCC, IBJJF, like, he's won them all. You do that by knowing what the criteria is to score and win. And where am I at? Henry Sassone wins by advantage. The final score I have for this is, let's see, match ends 2-0 with 1 penalty and 1 negative for 2 negative for Sassone, 0 points, but possibly 2 points, and 3 advantages and 1 negative for Trovo. Because I, at the end of the match, could not figure out if they had given Trovo the 2 points or not.
I had thought it was 2 points, therefore that's why had he gotten one more penalty, I thought that would have made it game.
Yeah, but again, it made it confusing for how you determine the games instead of the match. So, moving on to your people, Simon. Ultra heavyweight division, Roberto Cyborg Abreu defeats Victor Hugo 2-0 in what is essentially an annual match.
Yes.
Like, these guys meet up, and I love it every year, and I get confused as shit every single year because come January, I forget what match happened in what division and in what year because these guys have fought each other a number, like,
multiple promotions, multiple rule set. Yes.
And multiple times in the open class and in the weight at IBJJF
and often
Worlds.
in the same year, too. So you see them in 2 different IBJJF events, in the finals and in the open class.
There was one where Cyborg won his division, and then Victor Hugo kneebarred him in the other one. And
Is
I
that
forget.
No-Gi Worlds last year?
Last year, 2 years ago. Again, I don't remember. This match happens a lot.
You're right.
And honestly, every time I'm down to watch this match. It's 2 guys that are very, very close, that play disparate, different games. Like,
they're
Victor's
huge.
They're huge, and they're athletic, and they bring a really unique, like, style that is very different but very successful for both guys. Cyber wins this because he can fucking wrestle, dog.
I know, but this is the match that I want Hugo to, for the future of the sport and for the future of the division, you want Hugo to go over in this match. You want him to sort of take the reins and become the next guy because
Cyborg's 41 or 42 and still out there doing the damn thing.
Thank you, Acai and Jesus.
Thank you, Acai and Jesus. We'll get to that in the next match.
Both Acai and Jesus. We need to talk
Acai
about right
and
now.
Jesus. Cyborg gets a single. Gets like kind of like not even a really great single leg, but he just like a snatch single, and then drives it up. He lifts Victor Hugo's leg up, which is a task in and itself, and then he gets kind of close to the edge, kind of close to the side, and Victor Hugo goes, I'm gonna pull and see where it goes. He gives Cyborg the 2.
Yep.
Cyborg almost like a minute later gets triangled by Victor Hugo and then decides he's just not going to get triangled, frames, and I haven't seen a ton of guys use this defense. The commentator brought up people that do it, but it's not a defense I see super commonly. With his untrapped arm, he frames on Victor Hugo's face and the face itself in order to yank himself out of this triangle. And I went, that is a very, like, high-level defense that you are very confident in if you're going to do it. He yanks out. That was sort of the only point scored in the match. Cyborg's looking for outside passing. He's kind of stalling at points in the match, late in the match. But really, he got his points early. And then the Victor Hugo had to be the aggressor here.
He scored the 2, like, within the first few minutes,
I think within the first couple. I
didn't take down timestamps or anything like that, but it was quick, and then, we got interrupted for a commercial break.
We did. So let's talk about that. In the broadcast, for some reason, so Flo has made it even worse now.
How?
I don't know how. So we bitch about frequently about the picture-in-picture they do, where the broadcast that you're paying to watch becomes like 1/8 of the screen size, and then the other 7/8 of the screen size become an advertisement and like something else, but at least you can still see what's going on. What Flo has done now is they just pause the live broadcast. They, without warning, no fade or anything, they just hit you with an ad for like...
a PSA for Jesus.
Well, sometimes it's a Dodge Ram ad, but this time it was a PSA for Jesus.
Like on behalf of Jesus.
On behalf of Jesus, which was... Simon, you're more of a Jesus guy than myself.
I'm a Jesus guy. I am a fan of his work. Not a fan of all of his people, but who are you selling?
That was
like,
it was a weird. It made me really uncomfortable midway through watching 2 grown men fight.
This is not the target demo. This is not the right moment. Can you imagine if to bring more mainstream sports into perspective here? Can you imagine if during the Super Bowl, not during a commercial break or not during even a TV timeout, which they purposely schedule inside of these games, can you imagine if on the middle of a possession, they're at the 40-yard line, and then all of a sudden they went and they were like, hey, I want to talk to you about my Lord and Savior. That's
what happened. This was a World Finals match, and it was like, bing, midway, and then the commercial happens, and then you're right back to where you were at the match, and I'm like, oh, I looked away because it was a commercial, and I'm trying to watch the match again, but it was just, they found a way to make a paid service worse. And look, man, I'd already pay what is it, $150, $160, $170, whatever it is per year.
Maybe
I'm already kind of unhappy. You know what? Honestly, with the show, I'm happy to pay that. I wish the service was a little better. I wish there was some things they did. They have made a lot of really good changes that make the sport able to be covered now, and I can appreciate that. I don't appreciate a lot of their business practices and other things they do, and the banning of photographers at events and a bunch of other stuff where they make, especially what we do and fans, harder to enjoy the sport.
And more expensive.
Bro, I'll pay $200. Just don't give me fucking ads.
If
that's the thing. Hey man, no ads at all. $150 should already grant me that.
Mm-hmm.
It really should for the niche sport that we watch at the production quality that we have.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do that.
And
it's
you see it on
good.
other streaming platforms also, where they have multiple tiers. This is the cheapo tier, and you'll get occasional ads. And then if you buy for the premium tier, you'll get no ads. This one is just unexplainable, where they literally stop the feed entirely.
Yeah, they just
in
pause
the middle
it.
of
They just pause
the
it.
most interesting part.
And FYI, so I've talked to some broadcasters that are on the platform. No one knows that they do this. I've talked to promoters that are like, I was unaware that this happened during my event. I will look at my contracts.
That's very smart of them. It's literally in the middle of a potential touchdown scoring drive in the Super Bowl.
Of a world
Let's just
title.
cut the feed and without telling your commentators, then there's not even a quick sign off.
Well,
Let's hear from our commercial
It's
sponsor.
not even that. It's the feed just pauses. So you're no longer watching the live match. You're now delayed by that commercial interstitial. And then they cut the match. You don't miss it. Luckily, you don't miss anything. So it's I do appreciate that now. At least I'm not missing anything with the ad. But Flow has that fucking commercial break thing that plays after every match. Play it there. Mm-hmm. You already have this event is a commercial. No, it's not. It's an on-screen broadcast overlay. Play your commercial there, where you're doing. Where you already
you're telling me
F up on there's a commercial. Don't do it mid-match. Do it. When you're saying that there's a commercial, play the commercial, man.
So,
I'm not a fan of it. I don't like it, but you have a space for that already. Don't cut my match mid-match.
For ADCC, I know you were there. I was not. We've already touched on that.
Yeah.
So one of the chief gripes that everybody watching at home had were the commercial breaks and the weird pauses and the amount of times that stupid flow, the F is on the screen and it's just that
the music,
whatever song is in the background.
Yeah.
That song stuck in my head. I heard it so many times watching ADCC. Like you said, they went from that one of the most watched grappling event of the entire year
ever.
Now,
easily ever.
Months later, where you have everybody saying the production was great. You can tell okay, but the couple comments that they did have were these weird breaks were very frequent and very awkward. They somehow made that worse.
Yeah,
they inexplicably made that worse, and it's very detrimental to the product.
I'll pay $200. I won't be happy about it, but I'll fucking pay it.
And
just let me watch the thing I want and do a little better for making the videos searchable and add filters to stuff, and maybe give me a comprehensive results list for all of the events that stream on your platform after the event concludes. So I don't have to go to Bloody Elbow and the other Jits King and Grappling.
That's even asking for
things.
much compared to don't stop my feed
Yeah.
in the middle of the fight.
Yeah, I agree. Imagine doing it during like a Conor McGregor fight, which is, Cyborg and Victor Hugo, for our sport, are at similar levels of stardom. Like, these are two of the top guys in the legends of the sport. You're pausing a match during their bout to show me a commercial when I'm very engaged in the storyline and watching this match. So it's disrespectful to the audience, and I don't appreciate it.
Yeah.
So let's get on to the two matches that didn't happen suddenly. So Cyborg takes that by 2 points. That was a tangent we went off on. Heavyweight, Andre Pereira versus Wagner Hosha. Did not happen. Both athletes no-showed. I've seen a picture that shows, I think, Wagner taking gold and that, but not like an actual medal.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen results online that have basically the only people that medaled here were bronze.
Yep.
In the absolute, in the open class, Cyborg versus Henrique Sassoni, same shit happened. Cyborg gave an Instagram post at least after that was like, hey man, I got injured in my weight class. I was done. I had to catch a flight. I just bounced. I didn't matter to me, so I just left. He's already an 8-time world champion. Like, what's another one? I just loved that if you read that post and you believe that wholeheartedly, that he catching a flight was more important to him
than winning the open class
finals, or closing it and taking silver in the open class finals of the world championships. Yep. Like, as I don't move my flight around, like I don't move my flight. There have been some stuff. So online, basically, the rumor is that USADA was there.
Not a rumor, that was confirmed.
It was confirmed. I'm saying the rumor is that all of a sudden, about the time that these divisions were going, USADA showed up.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone went, deuces. I personally think we should test on ADCC years.
I don't think we should test at all.
I don't think we should test at all. But I'm just saying, ADCC years, like, hey man, do you want to see like really exciting grappling for a weekend? And like everyone, you want to have the best possible grapplers that are going to look the best, do the best, have the best cardio? Like, ADCC's not going to test. Let's just go. 2022 is not a year that we're going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that has been one of the allegations, is that like USADA showed up and everyone kind of went, deuces were out, because apparently like the arena cleared. Like a lot of folks left very suddenly when USADA showed up, because technically the IBJJF can test any athlete.
Mm-hmm.
They typically have only tested the GI World Championships winners, and every other year someone pops.
Who's popped besides Kanan?
Paulo popped.
See, this is how much I care about it.
Yeah, no, but it's still win. Like, hey man, you win on the day. I don't care what happens after. It's like, why? Because I watched you win the title, and like we do a sport where no one cares. We're also in the sports entertainment business.
Yeah,
where it's like it behooves us doing this podcast to have people that can have more exciting matches and train harder and recover from injury. So it behooves me to go like on that train. If you are an athlete competing, that's probably a different story.
So what's the argument for training for or testing for performance-enhancing drugs? Like, have there been...
It makes it less fun.
Have there been widespread deaths as a result of grapplers choosing?
It makes it less fun, and that's like one of the charges of the IBJJF is like...
Yeah, but it doesn't make them any more money, which is the chief charge of the IBJJF.
Yeah, there's that.
Yeah.
So both those two matches didn't happen. Allegedly, it was because some folks came, but really, like, the only guys that know are Wagner Hosha, Cyborg, Henrique Sassoni, and Andre Porfirio. And again, I'm not gonna in any way put allegations for any of those guys for whatever they do. I don't care. I love watching them compete. It is not my fight or game to have. I care to watch them compete as athletes, and that is the focus of this show. I would have loved to see them compete, but they didn't. And so even the commentary was like, apparently this is not going to happen, so have a nice night.
What does this ever happen? Like, I mean, even with the Wagner thing was really, really, really confusing, because at least with Cyborg, that
he made a post.
Yeah.
And then Wagner was just like, deuces, I'm out. So.
And Wagner's personality is such that, like, even if Wagner said, like, yeah, I saw USADA walking around and I just dipped, would he lose a single fan?
Nah,
would
bro.
people that love watching Wagner Hosha be like...
And by the way, and that being said, it could be an entirely different reason. Like, the USADA
100%
thing, the USADA thing is the thing we've heard. I don't want to be the outlet that spreads a rumor mill on that. But that is really the only explanation that the community has kind of come up with. So this is not Simon and I's coming up with this explanation. This is like the one thing that we've heard is like Cyborg gave the statement, but the other guys we didn't see anything from, and that the rumor from folks that we knew inside the arena was like, oh, USADA showed up and everyone cleared the fuck out, because everyone technically could be under testing, and a lot of folks in that room are preparing for a world title and world championship event, and so they're going to do whatever they need to do to be able to prepare for that effectively and take care of their bodies as best as they can with the science available to them. So that's that. Moving on. You want to start with moving on to the women. Do you want to start with the rooster weights, or do you want to start with the open class?
Let's start with the rooster weights, because I want to finish with the open class, because that was a lot of fun.
All right, rooster weights, we have Jennifer Aquino defeating Juliana Gregoraut via advantage. This is a leg battle.
Yep.
For points out of bounds. There's a near sweep in the last 30 seconds that gets an advantage.
She went for a guillotine in like the last 30 seconds.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so from top, she attempted the guillotine. It was literally seconds left on the clock. And commentary actually did a really good job pointing that out because they were like, that could be an ad, and then boom, it was the ad, and then
yeah, dude, Jake Watson and Chase Smith, like, dude, I can't say enough good things about those guys on commentary. I love. We've talked about it before, but Watson brings and like I love Chase Smith for like kind of the straight man, like and like the almost play by play, and Jake Watson because he's a very high level black belt, but he also brings a level of like enthusiasm and excitement to the broadcast, but it's not over the top like some broadcasts where it's like he's yelling into the mic and he's like it's not too much, but he shares that excitement he has for what he's watching with you while also being able to brilliantly explain what is actually going on in the match. And I think it's like that team that Flo has is phenomenal. And I want to hear these guys do most events on that platform.
So I think what you were going for was Julia tied it up with the sweep. It was Jennifer in the last 30 seconds went for the guillotine attempt, and that was the reason she got the ad to win it.
So Jennifer Aquino takes the world title.
They actually had a really fun leg lock battle in the beginning of the fight. Like that was one of those positional things where it's not that it's not a leg lock battle that was exciting because it was like, look at that buddy, he's about to rip that off.
He's about to break the leg. Yeah.
It was instead of wrestling, the positional battle in this match will start with our leg lock entries.
Yep.
So which for a sport that doesn't have hardly any good wrestlers.
Yep.
Finding different ways to create strategies to enter into your plan A offense, something like leg locks just can only make it better from a spectator point of view on top of that.
It gives people something to do in another area where they can excel and cause problems for someone else. So it's great. So Jennifer takes the world title at Roosterweight. Moving on to the light featherweight division, we had Alex Wynn defeating Jessa Crane via rear naked choke. Dude, Alex Wynn looked good here.
Didn't she sub her way through the whole tournament?
She might.
I think I saw that on one of her like post-fight interviews at the end of it. But she actually had, like we were talking about this earlier, one of the more fun things that we're seeing with passing at a higher level right now is as soon as she had passed, instead of switching her hips and settling in side control, she whipped around with the quickness to take her back.
Yeah, we saw that a bunch this weekend, and we're seeing it. We've always seen it. But we're seeing it used as like a strategy because people are getting so good, especially in ADCC, at turtling. And so what people are doing is they're reaching almost like the start of a Darce grip on the other side to grab the back there, and then they are using it to basically like monkey like swing to someone's back when you go to expose the back to stop the pass for the turtle.
Actually, I think she had the underhook, and she used that as her path. And whipped her body around to go take her back.
Yeah, it was a great
Jessica Crane actually did turtle up. Wynn just sort of like was really, really high and then sort of settled back in, and just sort of like rode her from the top there until she
flattened her out eventually. Yeah. I did love the initial score here. When Wynn sits down, and then
actually, I don't think she flattened her out here. I think you're thinking about the next match, the Tammy Mismatchy match.
I wrote bellies down hard on the hips, but I could be incorrect here. I did love the initial 2 points that Alex Wynn scores though, from butterfly, double hands, and then just like techs up to a spear. It's like a spear takedown from the knees.
Yep.
We saw that a couple of times this weekend, but I like butterfly guard and I like more options from butterfly guard, but we're seeing people hesitant to engage in the butterfly guard and kind of being over, and we're seeing people that are quick with a tech up be more and more effective with that like wrestle up spear from the butterfly guard than we ever had before. It was like a niche technique we'd see occasionally, like
somebody
Marcelo
just did it
in
an instructional.
Yeah,
I just saw it, like one of the little clips that they put up on like Instagram.
It's a thing Marcelo used to do.
Yeah,
but like it kind of fell out. It fell out of favor for a while. Now we're seeing it. We saw it, I think 3 or 4 times in finals matches this weekend. Like it is a thing that is coming back to prominence in a big way here, and it was cool to see as the kind of the first scoring sequence for the match. Again, I like watching people early from bottom position get points on the board, and not necessarily be in a protracted guard battle for all of the matches that we watch. So Alex Wynn takes a world title in the light featherweight division. Moving on to the featherweight division, we have Tammy Musumeci defeating Jasmine Hocha by rear naked choke. This is Jasmine's, I don't know if it's her first event as a black belt, but it's got to be close.
It's the first one that I remember listening to either you cover or me watching.
I think it is the first event we are going to cover her on as a black belt that is an IBJJF event. It's definitely the first major. I say that. I think it's the first major that we're going to cover her on.
And actually, Jasmine in this one was sort of using that wrestle up pressure.
She scores
Tammy.
on Tammy
Yeah.
very, very quickly at the beginning of the match. And I was like, ooh, is this going to be a...
But that also sort of led into her demise because when she was charging in her, that's when she got stuck in that Omo attempt.
She immediately gets up into the guard, and Musumeci, as soon as the points are conceded and Jasmine's on top, immediately cuts the angle to the omoplata. And omoplata is not really a technique that you're going to see finished in no-gi, especially for women's divisions, typically because they're so the shoulders for women are typically much more flexible.
No, but from a positional point of view, she kept her balled up with that.
Yeah, and then she reached over for the Imanari grip on the top, and I was like, okay, so Musumeci here has Hosha in a really, really tough spot. Jasmine Hosha did a great job. Tammy did a great job getting that and then holding the position and kind of weathering the storm of Jasmine's top pressure. But Rosha did a really good job of just getting up high enough to start freeing her arm, and eventually was able to roll through back into the guard of Musumeci and gets her arm out. But in that series, Musumeci then immediately gets to the back and kind of starts the beginning of the end there for Rosha. But I was very, very impressed with kind of how patient Jasmine was in that omoplata kind of combination stack, and how willing she was to kind of keep herself stacked up on her own neck and hips to get out of the omoplata. It's just, again, we've covered Jasmine since I think she was a blue belt or purple belt for a long time now. It's cool to see her rise up through the ranks, take on a very, very credentialed world champion black belt in him Musumeci, and have good answers to a lot of black belts get tapped by that. But Jasmine was fighting through to get out of the position. Eventually, Tammy is able to take it.
Well, from there, when Tammy takes her back, she sort of first gets to her back, doesn't have any hooks in. Yeah. And then she does the thing again where she's kind of high.
Well, you hear Mikey yelling at Tammy to get hooks, and she doesn't get hooks for probably almost...
Not until she flattens her out.
2 minutes, or a minute plus of time.
She keeps settling back. She finally gets her hooks in, and that's when she flattens her out and just finishes her from the bottom there.
She goes belly down and then goes belly up and finishes.
She was belly down, and she was doing the thing where she was fighting under hair and chins and whatnot to try to get underneath.
And then for the finale, she does turn to the side.
Yeah,
at the end, because I had to watch both these again because I switched them earlier. So Tammy Musumeci takes, I think, another world title in no-gi. I know she has gi world titles. I think this is another one in no-gi.
Yeah, they again one of the flow interviews she did afterwards.
Okay. I haven't got a chance to watch all the flow interviews yet.
I was doing it when I was looking for clips, trying to find all the fights.
Because they do that.
Because the mobile app's
not good. It's not great. Moving on to the next division, the lightweight division. Brianne Steve Marie. I called her St. Marie. Brianna Steve Marie versus Nikki Sullivan.
Making fun of me earlier when I messed it up.
Arm triangle.
Just smothered her from bell to bell. Just
my God. So I listened to BJJ Mental Models podcast that Brianna was on, and really insightful, mostly about close guard. It was a positional series they were doing. It was really interesting to have her talk about her instructional material and her game and the thought process for training and in her game, kind of surrounded around close guard, which was not on display in this match. But dude, Brianna just smashes from the top and just pressure Sullivan. And we've seen Sullivan deal with that because Sullivan's a woman that can fold herself in half and uses that as a technical and tactical tool in her game for all the matches she see. And Nikki Sullivan can comfortably put her legs behind her head to stop your guard pass. And Brianna just goes, cool, I'm not going to try to pass you straight on. I'm going to try to pass at your hips and over and just cut through the knee cut. And eventually, after so much time and pressure, you see Nikki Sullivan go, all right, I'm going to go for a leg lock here. And off of this leg lock attempt, Brianna just goes, nope, passes through, gets the really, really heavy arm triangle to the side and just...
She attacks the neck before she actually gets past her guard. This is one of those moments where is that high-low pass where she's, I'm going to attack high, and then eventually I'm going to wiggle my legs out, and then from there I'm going to continue setting it. And you saw her change grips a bunch of times. She grabbed her forearm, she eventually moved up, and then she got it to her bicep before the finish.
Yeah, the high-low pass was something... It was really good because it prevents a lot of the inversion from Sullivan. You hold the head, you pull the hips in, and all of a sudden, Sullivan still has amazingly mobile hips, but she's unable to easily kind of get underneath you and invert through underneath you again to kind of get a straight up guard on you. It was just very interesting to watch Brianna do that. And
her top game was just outstanding to watch.
ADCC. It looked like ADCC.
It looked like old school Lovato.
It did. We're just that heavy pressure where it's where you going? Nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
And just laid to the side. And Nikki Sullivan even has like the arm. She has her hand up in her own neck.
Yeah, it's like tucked in there.
Yeah. And Brianna's able to finish that regardless of that hand position.
I actually think that helped her because you know that arm triangle 1-on-1 defense, like trying to get that arm underneath your own leg to having that arm stuck here. There is
Sullivan had to use the other arm for a big piece of
once
that
she got to the side at that point, it was game over.
Yeah, just it was a tenacious performance and just heavy forward pressure from Brianna, and it impressed me again every time we cover Steve Marie.
It was one of my favorite matches on the whole day, like regardless of gender. That was just beauty to watch.
Yeah, impressive. Like old school. I think old school was one of the favorite guys to watch for both of us. That same like, hey man, nothing else you do matters. I'm just gonna grind through. Eventually you're gonna lose all your grips. I'm just gonna have your neck. So, moving on to the middleweight bout between Elizabeth Clay and Vanessa Griffith. I think they faced each other before.
A bunch of times.
Yeah. I'm not remembering how these matches have gone.
Clay just beat her at Pans this past No-Gi Pans this past year. I know that for a fact.
Okay.
And then I forgot what the other one was, but I saw like when I was tabbing through looking for all these matches, it was like Vanessa Griffith.
Other matches were coming.
Oh no, never mind. That's not the one I want. Oh, never mind. That's not the one I want. But even Vanessa, for somebody that we've seen a bunch, like from the Maryland area.
Yeah.
Clay just had her number in every position.
This match it ends up 19-0.
Yes.
And it really interesting finish. So Clay runs through the guard, half guard, hip switches, double unders on the elbows from really close to the beginning of the match. Gets to side control, then quickly goes to mount, and then kind of cycles between back mount and mount on Griffith and racks up 19-0.
She actually never went to side. She passed straight to mount.
Yeah. Well, she goes momentarily there, but doesn't score it, and then comes to mount. The camera angle's on the other side.
When she took her back, it was with like a really gnarly looking face crank.
Oh my god, the first face crank that Vanessa Griffin deals with is like the head is turned completely side because the camera angle, they have a low camera angle for it. You can see, I was like, oh, it's terrifying. But Vanessa, to her credit, like, I can either get cranked here or I can give up some more points, but I'm already down on points, so tactically, it's the right decision to make there. But Clay is just so good in the transition, stays on top again, she changes the grip for the second back take, I think.
Yes. Well, she used the gift wrap to get the back take.
Yeah. And then...
But she just kept attacking the neck. She kept setting up position. She has a fantastic referee death stare where before she gets to her next position, she's just looking up like...
Just looking at the ref for points.
Just give her the points. Make her stop looking like that.
She finishes here. So she gets 19 points in, I think, under 5 minutes. And then she finishes a modified version of a triangle from the back.
Okay, so you and I were having a hard time describing what...
No, I think you're having a hard time. Rachel does this to me.
Yes, I know
all
that,
the fucking time.
The description of it, though, like...
Yeah, how do we describe it here? So, basically, Elizabeth Clay has her top side leg next to Vanessa Griffin's neck. But she's behind.
If she's going for a reverse...
a triangle from the back.
But she's not actually...
But she's not going for it. And then at a certain point, she starts going like she's going to go like an underarm armbar behind the back. But Vanessa Griffin's doing a great job of like keeping her hands together. And so I watch Elizabeth, and what I care about more was the finish was neat, but the hand pummeling that Elizabeth Clay did really impressed me here. Where she's in this position, she does 3 different grip breaks in like pretty rapid succession. She goes like hand over on the Kimura grip break, turns it, that doesn't work. She slides her hand under to do like the knuckles break underneath the hand, doesn't quite work. She then grabs her own foot, puts her elbow in like you're going to do the break you do, like the grip break, when somebody crosses their feet and you're digging for an inside heel hook. But she does that with Griffith's arms. Because she goes with that elbow, she's able to get the arm underhooked and pass it across under her other arm, and then able to finish essentially what is like a shoulder crank on a top side Americana, but from the reverse triangle, that's a really, really hard position for your shoulder to be in. Clay never ends up locking the other leg over for the reverse triangle. She's just able to get enough leverage on that arm to finish it. Wild.
Yes.
Like, just wild.
What do you call that?
Like, it's kind of a mirror lock, but it's not.
But it's not really a mirror lock. It wasn't the angle of the mirror lock.
No.
It was the grip break you would use to finish a mirror lock.
Yeah.
While sitting back as if you were going for a reverse triangle.
Yeah.
But At no point did you do a mirror lock or a triangle.
It's kind of one of those things where it's just like it's a joint lock. It's like it's a shoulder lock that you did from this position that was like it is a submission without name, and that's pretty rare nowadays. Somebody please DM us if you have a name for this.
Call it the clay lock. Shit, why not?
Clay lock. If she hits it, you hit it more than once.
Oh, if she does this again on like a high stage, like even if it's not
that's the clay
IBJJF,
lock. Yeah, you win it. So again, very, very impressive performance from Elizabeth Clay. Looked phenomenal on the weekend. Takes another
4 times, I want to say.
Okay, and she has a bunch of them in the lower belts. I don't know how many black belt ones she has.
Yeah.
So moving on to the medium heavyweight division, we have Amy Campo defeating Melissa Couto via rear naked choke. Dude, Campo is so good, but you knew that from ADCC because she won ADCC because she beat Gabby Garcia, and everyone was like, "Oh yeah, we knew that at trials," because I watched her win trials and interviewed her at trials and went, "This woman is very, very good." This was, if you've watched Amy Campo, this was more of the same of her game. She plays a heavy top pressure outside stabilized game on the leg. She's going to throw a heavy knee cut in you, but what she's going to do is she's going to lean on you with that front side knee, and she's going to base her outside knee or leg really, really far away.
It took her forever to pass, though.
Yeah, because this isn't pass that is not, you're not trying to do a quick knee cut here.
Correct.
You're trying to lean into someone and force them to you fatigue the bottom leg, you fatigue the guard retention, and eventually you just lean into their guard enough here. But because your outside leg is so far posted out, you can just continue to kind of drive your chest pressure and your hip pressure into their leg. They can no longer, the person holding the guard can no longer hold your knee cut leg through or up at all, so the leg gets trapped on the bottom. Then you fatigue it further because you limit the mobility of that leg by leaning into it, and then you can just do what Campo does here and just kind of go into the next gear with that pressure.
Yes.
And
so
just
she
run.
was with all sorts of eternity just pushing into her, but when she did finally get past the guard, it was a really quick big step,
yes,
and then a really quick back take.
Yeah,
it was like all that pressure, all that cooking,
and we saw her
cooking, and then boom,
similar to the Garcia match, where it's like she was going through and then she immediately kind of jumped towards the back. Like, she does have a ton of dynamism.
Although
in her game.
This time with a person of relatively same size,
changed
the outcome of that. But at the end, no, it didn't change the outcome, but it changed the manner in which that guard was passed and the back was taken.
Eventually Campo, she gets the pass, she goes right to the back in one sequence, and then belly down breaker choke.
Yep.
Kind of we know one of the things that Campo is very, very good at, but look to see more Campo, because now she's a black belt. We're going to see her against the black belts. Don't be surprised if she takes home a bunch of other world titles in the next couple of years. Very, very good. Next match, we have a heavyweight, Andressa Sintra taking on Thalita Lima. Wins it via knee bar. This was a back and forth match. This was a match that I wasn't certain Sintra was going to take, because Lima looked like she was going to take this match, not comfortably, but definitely was in the driver's seat for the majority of this match, pretty much from the moment that Sintra starts to take her down, and then she just jumps a guillotine.
It was that wrestle into you, and then, all right, I'm going to snatch that neck thing.
Yep. And Couto, and tactically, does a really good thing, because Sintra's coming into her. She pulls guard, she jumps guard into the guillotine. You're going to concede the points there if you do that, but the guillotine was tight, and they're off the mat.
You used to do this to me all of white belt, blue belt. Like, it was very painful.
Many years ago. Yeah.
And it got to the point guys couldn't guillotine me anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I did a lot. I watched. I
very much appreciate that.
I did that a lot to people.
But yeah, no, and then.
But so this was some more fuckery with points, because Jake Watson said it on commentary, and I looked at it and I was like, there is something I don't understand here, because in my understanding of this, and the only reason this could be the case is they restarted because they were off the mat, because basically Thalita Lima at one point arches up a second or third time for this, trying to finish the guillotine choke, and they're off the mat. They're out of the warning area now, onto the blue section of the next mat, and they stop the match. I love that IBJJF is now allowing stuff to happen on the yellow border, a little bit off, where it's they're not just so hard and fast with positions like this that are oh, no matter, you touch the yellow, we're out, or you're on the edge of the yellow. They let stuff work and play out so that the limiting of the edge play is like not as much of a factor.
Yeah.
You know, we see so many fewer weirdness with resets and changes because athletes work within the blue, they work to the yellow, they work in the yellow, and then the yellow is big enough where they can actually like get some work done, and then the referees now have the autonomy to actually make a good decision of where that's going to stop, as opposed to before where it's like, well, you're in the yellow and you're not moving, we can stop you. Now, like, you have to be off the section before they stop you. Very, very good change.
So, okay, so was your beef on the scoring or on the giving of the ad?
So my thought was here, you had Thalita Lima get restarted, not in a sub, not without Cintra's neck, in the center. So that's a submission off the mat with no fault of Cintra. That should be 2 points. My question is it not 2 points because it was done as a counter to a takedown from Cintra? That's my question.
I thought that was no, because of the nature in which she was wrestling into her. She snatched the guillotine. It wasn't that she was fleeing, or not like fleeing a submission attempt, but
yeah,
the aggressor was the one trying to like. It's in the best interest of the aggressor here, the person doing the takedown, to keep this action into the mat.
Yes,
and
it was weird. Like, I think that what they saw this is Cintra coming in. Cintra did a takedown off the mat that ended where she didn't pop her head out, so you give the advantage to Cintra. You don't get points off the mat. You get an advantage for a takedown off the mat, and they give that. But Thalita Lima had a guillotine, and that's a sub attempt off the mat.
So should that be an ad?
So that should be 2 points.
Oh, sorry.
And she wasn't given the 2 points, and Jake Watson and myself were confused as to like, well, that seems pretty clear, but it didn't get brought up again. It didn't get changed, so that's probably a misunderstanding of my interpretation of the rule.
She makes it so in the end where you don't really need it. Doesn't matter at that point.
We had mistake. 2:20 left. Cintra from close guard. I love this sequence here. Shoots an armbar on Thalita.
She wasn't really playing much close guard up until that point, though. Right?
No, really open guard, seated, double feet in front, hands in front, like kind of ready to deal with whatever Thalita Lima
and, like,
was.
Overall in grappling, like close guard hasn't really become an offensive position. Like it's kind of become like, I'm gonna like chill here for a minute while I set up whatever my next
whatever my next open guard is that I'm gonna use.
So this setup coming from close guard, that's the one thing that I had in my notes. This
is what I want to talk about for the gamesmanship here. You see Cintra, and Cintra's got a really great armbar game. She, I think, has a world title win or a silver win by armbar. She throws the armbar from the guard, and you see Thalita go, oh no, postures back. Cintra uses the pulling back out of the armbar that wasn't really deep to invert, go for the leg, spins down, gets the knee bar, and then bellies up with the knee bar and finishes it with that same grip. Wins a world title off of that.
It was that like not far side leg, but it was not the leg. That
it was the inversion side leg.
So her just diving for that far side leg, and that hunt for that submission at the end of that.
And she would have never gotten that if Lima had been heavy in her guard and her hips like she was before. So she uses the armbar to get Thalita Lima leaning back so that the leg can come up. So if you go to lift it on a knee bar, they're not over their hips anymore, and you can actually get them over. And I was like, look at that. That's an amazing gamesmanship sequence to know exactly, like, yeah, I'm going to go for the armbar. It's there. I'll take it. But I'm actually looking for you to just move your hips so that I can go for this knee bar. And it was a wild, like, sequence to think about to do that. And I like watching knee bars. They're one of my favorite subs to watch. And she gets the knee bar, and then Justice Cintra takes the heavyweight title for the women. Super heavyweight, Luina Monta versus Leticia Cardosa was a closeout. Open, not a big fan. Amy Campo, Elizabeth Clay. This was a match that I was itching to see after both of their runs in their divisions.
Yes. This is actually, this was by far my favorite of the female fights. One of them, like I was saying earlier, like Clay had a great tournament. Campo had a great tournament. Having them both match up in the absolute finals, best possible outcome for the female side of this bracket.
Yeah,
and the match itself delivered. Like all of Clay's sub attempts are with such viciousness. Like you're like, dude,
and
like
that's
who hurt
when
you?
We started.
Who made you this
Clay.
angry? What? Why are you trying to hurt these people so bad?
I love it, dude. That's what brought us to Clay initially, because she had such an aggressive sub game early in her career. I mean, won trials at, I think 15 for ADCC, something like that.
stupid.
I think
Yeah.
the youngest
Because she started
winner
doing like
ever.
crazy super fights and stuff like that right when she
like-
turned 17, 18.
I think, yeah, something like 16, I think.
Something like that, yeah.
But just that she's just so aggressive. And like here with Campo, just did the same thing. It was like, man, like Campo is a woman that can punish you for that aggressiveness. And we've seen Clay get beat. I mean, and Campo does beat her here.
Yeah.
It's because you can have someone that can contend with that level of pressure and aggressiveness. This match is close.
Yes.
This match is 3-2 for Campo.
It is. I just wanted to highlight Clay as an entertaining grappler. I think that's why she's still, even with a bunch of her super fight losses, she still gets brought in by every single promotion. That belly down armbar that she went for, all of her sub attempts, but that one was like, ooh, okay, never mind. It almost makes you cringe every time you see it because you think somebody's about to get hurt very badly, and I don't want to actually watch that. But Campo was that was her day.
Campo looked amazing. Played it well, and sort of Clay slows down towards the middle of the match, and then Campo kind of like towards the end of the match, Clay's in the guard, and Campo is just sort of like pressured in, knows what he has to do, knows she's up, knows that Clay has that really dangerous inverted knee bar, kind of really similar to what Sintra hit, knows how to stay away from that, keep heavy pressure on the hips, and force Clay to like just fight for the upper body. Beautifully played by both women, and again, super close match. Not going to be surprised to see both of them against each other for the future for a long time. I think we're going to get Yana Suarez and Gabriela Pisana in most of the gi finals for open class. Would not surprise me for almost all the women's open weight finals for no-gi to be these two ladies, or to have these two ladies taking on Gabriela Pisana and Yana Suarez in the open class in the gi as well. Very, 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 very exciting heavyweight grapplers. And so Ami Campo takes takes weight and absolute 2-time and new black belt too. Like this is her first year at black belt. Again, new black belts are getting scary. We're starting to see less of that in the men's divisions. For years we've seen like black belt prodigy brown belts go to black belt and first year black belt world champions who are titles. And there's been a bit of a gap for a lot of the women for that. That gap is starting, I think, to go away. Yeah. We're seeing more new female black belts that can now immediately contend with that upper echelon in the women's divisions. And it's very cool to see that, like, yeah, man, the next killer in 4 years or 3 years is a 16-year-old woman at 150 that we don't know about yet. And in Grappling Rewind in 2026, we're going to be talking about that new female black belt that's already in the contention with the men, much like we're talking about like the men's champions now that are at that age. The parallels kind of, this is one of the first tournaments that we're the first years that we are really starting to see that come to prominence, like Jasmine Rocha in the finals, Amy Campo winning weight and absolute. Like we're seeing more and more new female black belts immediately contend and win, and it's cool.
Of note, for this being a ADCC year No-Gi Worlds tournament, still, especially on the women's side, surprisingly entertaining finals across the board, across all weight classes.
I think this has been maybe not the most entertaining No-Gi Worlds, but definitely up there as far as...
But to your point, when you see an Amy Campo who had the tournament of her life at ADCC 2022 and then does it again at No-Gi Worlds that year, and traditionally what should be a boring No-Gi Worlds because nobody's going to pay attention to it because we just got the Grappling Olympics a few months ago.
Pretty much. So, yeah, overall fun tournament. Definitely some matches to go back and watch. I'm really happy with. I'm not a huge fan openly of the IBJJF and a lot of the things that they do, but I do think that they are more rapidly so, still pretty slow, making changes to that organization for how it runs, for how they're doing. Even the edge of the map play stuff they changed this year, like hugely helpful for entertaining and allowing the athletes to work, and like
the scoring out of bounds is like that changed so many game plans across these final yes, very but all of these things I say are for the better. When it more so legitimizes the sport, there are signs of growth that these type of things, that the level of gamesmanship has gone beyond just like, let me give the ref a certain look, and more into this is part of the strategy. These are fundamentals on how to win. This is what mainstream sport coaches get paid millions and millions and millions of dollars to figure out how can I best put myself, my team, whatever, in a position that we can win given the constraints of the rules that are put in front of us. Yeah. And with these sort of rules being implemented in IBJJF, who is continuously trying to defend themselves as the flag bearer of the sport, for them to have these rules change in a positive way and actually affect their championship events in a good way is only a positive for the growth of the sport.
Absolutely. So that's No-Gi Worlds. I've thought of the good and the bad stuff, but I think overall this year, the quality of athlete that we're getting and the quality of technique that we're seeing across, this is by far, I think, the highest level of technique. And you can look year to year and see, like, I can't point to this year like, oh, that was a mistake. Like previous years, like, oh, guys have made mistakes. When we made mistakes in divisions, like every match here was like, oh yeah, that was a tactical decision you made. But they're no like, I probably shouldn't have done that. It doesn't really happen as much anymore, and it's awesome to see. It's awesome to be able to cover it. So, all right, that does it for the recap of No-Gi Worlds. Let's move to the outro section, Simon. What are you going to
say? Yeah, we already did the what's it called, the preview stuff.
Already. I'm
all thrown off,
right,
man.
It's weird, dude, for your first show. So, what you got going on this week? Anything good?
Nah, can't really think of anything crazy. Training when I can, working, taking care of my kids, that kind of stuff.
Nice, normal dad stuff. I'm doing commentary in Virginia this week for Copa Virginia again. So Zach and I are going down. I think Miranda's coming with us as well. So we're gonna go do commentary. I love doing commentary for Copa Virginia because they bring out some local talent. Every tournament now, it is less of a local tournament nowadays because it's a cash prize division, and so guys that are from like our greater Maryland, Baltimore, DC, Virginia, West Virginia, PA area are like, I can win some money. We're seeing talent come into these tournaments, and I'm like, oh, that's like last time we had Yuta Shimada, former ADCC trials winner in Asia from 2017, fought JG Torres' first round. Like he was in the tournament, and it's like, oh, crazy. We had Gavin Corbray. We had Christian Banghart, a local guy. He won last time. We've had a bunch of names. Alexander Romanovsky from the UFC.
Yep.
Did one of them.
Romanov.
Sorry, Alexander Romanov. A couple, like 1 or 2 events ago, like we get to see a much higher. We saw Gavin Corbray win like 3 of these we've commentated, and it's just very, very cool to like be able to be fortunate enough to commentate these guys locally that go on and like do great things, or just like showcase the level of talent that is in our area and like makes you go, oh.
So when they come to Maryland, are you commentating on that? Or are you?
I don't know if I'm commentating.
Coaching?
I'm definitely coaching. I'm hopefully competing.
I'm definitely competing, so I hope you're coaching.
Yeah, it's like 10 minutes from our gym.
Yeah.
Like, how can you not support? So, yeah, it's Copa Maryland is coming to Dundalk, Maryland on like January 28th. And so, 28th or 29th? 28th. So, yeah, I don't know if we're commentating on that one because it's the first move for Maryland into Maryland for them. So, there may not be a cash prize division for that one, but definitely going to bring our team there and like our guys there. And if there is a guy that I can compete against, I will for sure be competing.
Yeah, no, like I am the type of person that needs a date scheduled on the calendar.
Yeah.
So like I know for a fact it's January 28th. I'm pretty sure that gives us about 6 weeks right now. So
about
now it's
6 weeks.
Like, all right, now's the point in time where I got to stop eating entirely like crap.
Yeah.
Stop making excuses and get into the gym at 6 a.m. whenever you say you will. And then, yeah. Hey,
yeah. Now
dad
we
stuff,
ramp up the
irregular work schedule.
Training.
Yeah, I have to get in at 6 a.m. or I might not get into training at all.
Get the training in, which is
man.
It's awesome to have you in. So that does it. I don't think I have anything else.
Oh, shout out to Will Soitzman from our team.
Yeah.
Took 3rd at No-Gi Worlds for blue belt.
For weight and absolute.
Yeah.
Which is like good for him, man. It makes you feel less bad about getting the shit beat out of you by that guy.
So Will's like one of my favorite training partners of all time because he's like 50 pounds lighter than me, but he has insane pressure.
Yeah, dude.
So it's like I'm constantly going against an ultra heavyweight, but then it's somebody that can like outmove me and outmaneuver me on top of that. Oh, I love training with Will.
He's one of the few big dudes that I can.
He's such a nice guy.
With.
Like every single person's happy that Will got double bronze at No-Gi Worlds.
Congrats, man!
From our little old gym.
Love to see it. Yep. So I think that is all that I've got. I don't think we have any other big events coming up. New Year should be fun. UFC Invitational should be fun. Looking forward to that. And that's it. As always on the show, I'm your host, Maine, the co-host,
Simon.
And we are the Grappling Rerun. Chill on that, whatever it is. Stay safe. If you like the show, please consider sharing it on Facebook with the folks at your gym. It's the best way that we grow the show, and we really appreciate it. You can reach out to us on email.
We also have Instagram, we have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have Google+.
Until that shuts down.
We have a website.
If you have an event you would like to have us cover, please let us know. If you have a name, like most people do, and you'd like to have us stop butchering it,
Let us know.
reach out to us. The show is also available on YouTube, Spotify, in addition to iTunes and every other podcast service. We very much appreciate your time, and thank you.